I'd like to call this meeting to order. First, I would like to announce that this Monday, June 23rd meeting of the Board of Selectmen is being recorded, and ask if there's anyone in the audience who is also recording this meeting. Hearing none, if we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item we have is public comment, and we have the town manager.
Through the chair, thank you. I wanted to have the pleasure of introducing you to our new library director, Carol Ann McMaster, and ask her if she would just come up and say a few words. Oh, I'm sorry, Carolyn, if you want to come up to the table here, that would be great. And just by way of background, the Board of Trustees had worked with me to advertise and interview for positions, and they unanimously came back and recommended Carol Ann for the position, and I obviously concurred with their recommendations. I think she's a great choice. Carol Ann had been the interim director for a couple of months in between, and the Library Board of Trustees did a great job. They had a lot of candidates that they had to look at, a lot of qualified candidates, but Carol Ann certainly rose to the top. So,
Good
Hello,
evening.
thank you for welcoming me. I don't know what to say. I'm the new library director. I have a master's degree from Drexel University. I am on the board for the Massachusetts Library Association for the conference, and on the New England Library Association board conference. And we have tons of new programs that we're bringing to the library. We have a calendar that's just jammed full of great things. We have some big renovations going to take place in the next several months, new carpeting, new handicap doors. We just got a great chain link fence put in along our little waterfall, so now we can have some great outdoor programs and not have to worry about someone going over the edge.
Excellent.
And we will be looking to remodel the library when we put the new carpet in. And we have just worked out a great agreement with Perkins for assistive technology. And we're going to be the primary library in Central Mass for people with disabilities, for both visual disabilities and hearing disabilities. We're going to have a giant open house, which you'll all be invited to, and we're looking to increase at least 600 patrons who don't have a library to use because the libraries around them either are not handicap accessible, and we will be when we put our new doors on, or simply do not have the correct equipment that they need. So we're going to reach out a whole group of new people that really can use our services.
Excellent. Well, congratulations and welcome to the town of Auburn.
Thank you.
thank you. And I want to take the opportunity just to thank specifically the chairman of the Board of Trustees, Matt Toth, and all of the trustees. They've just been great to work with. It is a large process to go through to hire a position, and they just did a tremendous job. So I want to personally thank them for all their help, too.
Thank you. Again,
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Come visit us.
And next we have Michael Wade. Mr. Wade, if you can come up to the microphone, please. Yes, I am.
My name is Michael Wade, and I'd like to address the selectmen on a zoning issue that I have. And mainly the issue is with the zoning board.
With that going, can you just either speak right into the microphone or speak up a little bit?
Or if they can turn it up for us, if you guys can turn up the microphone for
I'm
us.
sorry to interrupt. I just want to be able to hear everything that.
Okay, go ahead, we'll see if we can hear.
The problem I'm having, it seems like we have two different standards on the zoning board. I don't know if any members of the selectmen saw the last zoning meeting, which I attended, and it becomes a knockdown, drag-out affair. See if we can stop Mr. Wade from doing what he wants to do and what's being done in the district that I'm in, and all of a sudden they're putting different I wouldn't say rules, but different things on me, asking me to do stuff that nobody else has done. I've been to enough zoning meetings in that area where I'm in. I'm in a GI district. It's on Route 20 or Washington Street. The building I'm talking about is 440 Washington Street. And all of a sudden, the zoning says, well, I should make an overlay district in that, yet nobody else has been required to do it. I've been to zoning meetings where I've been where my abutters, which we are all in the same GI district, go before the zoning, and they are treated completely different than what I am treated. And I know you people appoint the zoning, okay? But I think it should be looked at, and like I says, if you don't believe me, go watch the tape, or I think it's on YouTube or whatever if you missed it, because it was a knockout, drag-out affair. And it's getting to the point where I'm getting tired of it. I'm getting tired of being discriminated against every time I go to the zoning board, and I'm not asking for anything else that has not been done in that area. So in other words, the precedent has been set in that area, and they should be following the same guidelines of that. And it seems like all I'm doing is being discriminated against, and it's a fight. It is really a fight. And I go before the planning board, don't seem to have the problems. I go before the conservation, I don't seem to have the problems. It seems like all my problems are with the zoning board. And it gets to be personal because there are people sitting on the board that maybe it's a little personal, I have no idea, but I'm held to a whole different standard than everybody else that goes for that. And what happens is that opens this town up for a lawsuit, because I'm tired of getting discriminated against, and I'm tired of having a knockdown fight. I have to go in July again, and like I said, we'll see what happens then, because it seems like when I come and complain to the selectmen, the next time I go there, it's like we're going to get Mr. Wade, we're going to really give it to him this time, and that's what I'm saying. And it shouldn't be that way. Personal should not be in this business at all. Okay. Everything should be looked at on the same plateau. I'm not held to any different standards than anybody else that goes before me, and that seems to be always the problem.
Okay. Can you just tell me what the date of that meeting that you mentioned?
What was that?
Tell me the date of the meeting that you mentioned.
It was last Thursday, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the 19th, but I could be wrong. And I think, check in with it, because I wanted a copy. I think they said it goes on YouTube, so everybody should be able to view it. And you see what happened in there, and see if I'm making up something that isn't what's happening to me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? I thank
thank
you.
you.
I appreciate it.
Mr. Simonian?
Yeah, I don't want to drag it out, but I just wonder if you could provide a couple of written examples. Just,
I can-
I mean, bring them to town hall, whatever, and just,
Yep.
if you could put them in our,
Right.
have them put in our folders up there,
Yep.
because I don't like to hear stuff like that, and if that's going on, it shouldn't be. I agree with you.
It shouldn't be
So-
there. It should not be there. And I've complained before to this board, I think last year or the year before. I've complained to the town manager, I've complained to the building inspector. I've done a lot of complaining because I can see how everybody else is treated compared to me. And
Okay.
there's no reason for that.
Okay, so if you can, allow,
Yeah, I
Mr.
will.
Simonian made it,
Yep.
because
Thank
we've
you.
gone past the 3 minutes, so we're going to move on.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the Outback Steakhouse for liquor license change of location, 452 Southbridge Street. Is there a motion to open the hearing?
Motion to open the hearing.
Second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. The hearing is opened. Good evening. If you could just identify yourself for the record and tell us a little bit about why you're here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Joe Devlin. I'm an attorney from the DeMarcus Law Offices in Lynn, Massachusetts, and I represent Outback Steakhouse of Florida, LLC, which is a holder of an all-alcohol beverage restaurant license here in Southbridge. Typically, I'm here and I say there's some obscure upper-tier change in the corporate structure, and I say nothing's changing at the location. I can't say that tonight. Outback is changing their location from 771 Southbridge Street to 452 Southbridge Street. The operations there will remain the same, and it's going to be the same type of restaurant, a little bit smaller, actually. But they're just hopefully going to be able to bring the same experience or slightly better experience to more people at that location. Outback's a publicly traded company, so they're always looking for ways to improve, to satisfy their shareholders and satisfy their customers. They had a list of 100 locations in the country that they like to do business in, and they thought that they could improve their operations there. Auburn was one of them, and what that meant is that they were going to invest a little over $2.5 million in a new location. They like this location better because it's closer to commercial properties and hospitality, like hotels, which is a big driver of business. It's also, they like to control and have a freestanding building closer to the road that they build. That's been their strategy for the last 5 to 8 years, because they can incorporate all the things that they want to in the flow inside, and new materials and latest design. There's a smaller restaurant, as I mentioned. The interior square footage is about 1,500 smaller. It's about 199 seating capacity. I think that the current one's around 228 or 230. It's going to have a seasonal patio again, but even with that included, it's about 600 square feet smaller. Benefits to Auburn is they're renovated. They took down and are building in where the abandoned Bickford's was. It's a new, clean restaurant space with the latest design. And it helps the other nearby businesses. They are helped by those businesses, but they help, there's some vacant spaces down there. A construction of this sort will help drive people. People follow a successful company like Outback, so maybe some of the vacant spaces will be filled. Outback's a publicly traded company, got 21 locations under 4 concepts in Massachusetts. Most of them are Outbacks. And the Carrabba's, Fleming's, and a new concept called Bonefish Grill. They've had very few violations. They've got 1,400 locations nationwide. The reason they've had very few violations is they focus on food and product and presentation and price. So they intend to continue that here at the new location and hopefully improve upon it.
Okay. Just a couple questions. Do you know when the anticipated opening is?
Sometime late October 20th.
Okay. And you mentioned an outdoor patio. Would there be liquor served on the outdoor patio?
There would be.
If there is, you would be required to come before this board again for a separate license for service outdoors.
Okay.
Okay. Just so that you keep that in mind. In October, you may still be using an outdoor patio in October.
That's a good point.
And the other thing was, of course, you've been here before us, so you know if there's any change in manager, with the transition of a new opening, you would also have to go, put application into the ABCC for a change of manager and come before this board as well.
They don't anticipate that. My firm's actually represented Outback since they first came to New England in 1993, and I've been representing for 11 years now. The general managers tend to stay, and if they don't, when they do move, they move up into the corporate hierarchy. So they don't anticipate that right now, but they
I just wanted
certainly
to
will.
make you aware of that.
Thank you.
Are there any member questions? Mr. Simonian.
Just a couple. In the motion for the change, it talks about the conditions of the license, and I went through the entire packet, and I'm sure they were attached to when they originally applied for the liquor license, but it's not in here now, and I guess I would have to assume that nothing's changing there, other than the new address and all that being put on the license, but I don't know what the practice is in the past, but just to refresh, especially where we have a fairly new member to the board, if we could, for things like this, include the license and the conditions that were originally put on it, it would just, everybody would be aware of exactly what those are and what they're already operating under.
And we'll certainly do that, and we can certainly make it part of a motion tonight if we so choose to include any conditions that may be on the existing license. Are there any other questions or comments?
Just a process question, Madam Chairman. You're still operating at the location in your current location?
Yes.
Do we need to put a date that the change of location becomes effective? Because you are continuing to, I'm assuming, serve alcohol up until the date of this opening.
Yes.
So I didn't know, Madam Chair, if that was something we needed to consider when we're granting it, that they're thinking October, you said?
Well-
October of this year?
Correct.
If we don't have a specific date, we could make it conditional on a date to be transferred in October, providing that they are serving the alcohol in one location only.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I can't imagine that you're going to, keep both, like,
No,
open,
and-
even overlapping. You're going to have a grand opening, but we could, put the date is to be, the license is to be transferred in October. If the license isn't transferred in October, then we could ask them to come before the board.
No, I was concerned because I know that they
Yeah.
were still operating, and it seemed perhaps a little
Yeah.
advanced, so I just wanted to make sure we were covered. So
And they have their license through the end of November. Is that the liquor license? End of December, but they're all due to back before the ABCC for November. So they have a valid license. So we could put it a date in October. Are there any other member questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, so voted. Is there a motion regarding the license?
Motion to approve the change of location for the current liquor license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town, any of its departments, boards and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all the conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all of the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void. So there, where it speaks to the conditions and we're not aware, I guess would be something to the effect of continuing to operate under the current conditions as prior approved. And also to Mr. Carpenter's point that the license would transfer
In the month of October?
in the month of October if that's when it does in fact open. If there's a delay, would we then require them to reappear to change that language, or would we just do that without?
Well, certainly we want notification if it's not going to happen in October.
Absolutely.
All right, fair enough then.
I mean, part of the timing issue, I'm not sure I have any relevant, I mean, part of it's going to be when the ABCC decides to approve it, but I don't think they're going to want to change it. They won't want to change over, even if this got approved in August by some miracle. The other place wouldn't be ready, and I do believe they want to keep the other location open as long as possible. But the distributors won't deliver to them once this is changed at the old location, so.
Yeah. And this is a change of location, so.
Okay, that's,
So, Sharon, do
that
you have that
covers it
motion?
then.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, so voted. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Just keep us
I'm-
updated.
I'm the next one too, though.
Oh, okay.
That's what that big file is, change of location.
Okay. So the next is a pledge of license, pledge of inventory, and change of beneficial interest for the liquor license for Applebee's New England, 680 Southbridge Street. Is there a motion to open the hearing?
motion to open the hearing.
Is there a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, so voted. I'll just put a disclosure on the record first. I have one filed in the clerk's office, but my son is an employee of Applebee's as a cook, and I have no financial interest in the license. Please proceed.
It wouldn't be the same if I came here without saying the nothing is changing change. I was here about 3 years ago and said very similar with regards to Applebee's, all the Applebee's in New England were bought by a company ultimately up here. It was bought by Apple New England, but the 100% owner was a company called Apple American Group Holding LLC. In that group was the equity investor, the moneyed people, which was Goldman Sachs. All of it was disclosed. They owned about 60% of the company. Goldman Sachs is selling all their interest to the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan Fund, which is the pension plan fund for all of the current and retired teachers in Ontario. They've got billions in investments. This is just one of them. Frankly, the reason they're doing this probably is because that company has more money and more assets, so it enables them to get better credit terms and have more money to open additional locations. This Apple American Group is the largest Applebee's franchisor in the world. They've got 450 locations in the country and 28 in Massachusetts. The companies, that Apple American Group company is changing its name as well to Flynn Restaurant Group LLC. Gregory Flynn, if you look at the old application, is the disclosed CEO and LLC manager. He's the number one principal in this group from 2 or 3 years ago. So none of those officers are changing. None of the operations are changing. The headquarter people that I deal with in California and Oregon are not changing. It's really just the equity investor, which is what helps companies get bigger. And they do this periodically. They go to a bigger investor that can provide them more funds and better credit terms. There's about 4 of these going on tonight, 4 locations. One in Leominster that I know off the top of my head. We couldn't send the manager because the managers don't really know anything about this, so they wouldn't have been very helpful.
So this has already been approved by the ABCC, it's just
has.
because we're the local licensing authority, we need to,
Bless it, in my opinion, and be informed about it. In my opinion, you're the most important.
thank you. Questions, comments, Mrs. Simonian?
I have a question. On the petition for transfer of ownership, I have a question, where it says, transferred from and to. It has the same exact names, and it doesn't mention anything about the group, the investor group that you just spoke to, so,
Because there's no room for it, but what they want, the ABCC wants this form, even on a change of beneficial interest where nothing's changing. It's their quick cheat sheet to see who the approved and disclosed officers are. So even on a change of officer where it's not a petition to transfer, like if one officer was changing, you'd write down the same officer. In this case, I just had to write down everything the same. Where it does show the change is in Exhibit A for the corporate ownership, which is, there's a chart in there that looks like, I think it's Exhibit 10, but there's a chart in there that looks like this.
give me a second, I think.
And then to the ABCC, and I believe you got it too. You got any of the principal officers that might have a say in the operations.
So just that org chart,
The ABCC also got a package of corporate documents that were about this thick.
it's acceptable to list it here on the org chart and not on the petition?
Yes.
I've never seen it before, so I'm asking for reference.
Yes.
All right. I was just curious about that because it didn't seem, I saw the name on the org chart, but not on there, so.
There's
Okay,
only so much room in the computer forms that you have to, and they want it a certain way because that's what they use that petition for. They keep it at the front of the file and they can look quickly and say, here are the approved officers. Okay, nothing's changing.
on the paper, it just looks like the same people are selling it to themselves.
Well, and that is one of the issues is nothing, the licensee, nothing's happening there. This is 4 levels up
Okay,
at the, investor ownership level. So it doesn't quite fit with the choices we have in our boxes either. But I met with the ABCC investigator. I've done a bunch of these before, and that's how they like to see it.
appreciate the explanation, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Is there a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Is there a motion regarding the license?
Well, I'd make a motion that we approve the pledge of liquor license, pledge of inventory and change of beneficial interest at 680 Southbridge Street, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of the departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license subject to all the conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one.
Yes.
Similar to the last one, if we could just get in the habit of attaching the original conditions when we have changes, it would just be nice to see what was previously approved. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Thank you. So I have
Very much.
one question for you before you go. Do you also, I believe, represent Auburn Package Store?
I do.
And I believe they have an application in before us for the next meeting, which would be June 30th. And this is for a pledge of license. Is this time sensitive? Later on in our agenda, we have discussion on whether we will be meeting on the 30th. I'm not sure if we'll have a quorum. Our next meeting would be July 14th.
I in no way want to make you meet on June 30th. I want to come face you.
We would meet, if it was time sensitive, we would absolutely meet. I couldn't, I would know later in the meeting if we had a quorum, but if not, this isn't time sensitive? Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Good seeing you.
And the next item we have is Superintendent Dr. Mary Ellen Brunel to update the board on the Town of Auburn's application to the MSBA for the Accelerated Repair Program for Bryn Mawr and the current middle school. Dr. Brunel, please come up to the table with us.
Oh, sure.
And-
Peter Gray, the business.
Yep, and Mr. Grady as well. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Ms. Jacobson, Mr. Kwiatkowski. Congratulations, Mr. Carpenter, first. We're here this evening, Mr. Gray and I, and Mr. Fahey as well, if you have any additional questions, to update you regarding the Accelerated Repair Program through MSBA. If you'll remember, the board, back in the late winter, gave the unanimous support for us to submit an application for roofs and boiler repairs at Bryn Mawr, Current Middle School, and Packagug. So I'm happy to announce to you that we've been accepted into the program for a new roof at Bryn Mawr and a new roof and a boiler at the Current Middle School. So at this time, there is no financial commitment. However, we did share this great news with the school committee just this past Thursday. They're very excited, and especially at the point that this has the potential to save the town 50% of the cost of these repairs through this program, 50% plus. MSBA actually determines that value. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gray to update you in a little bit more detail about this program, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I guess the first thing I'd like to point out is the fact that the word accelerated makes one think that this will be a speedy process, but I temper that by saying it's a state accelerated program, which means it'll be a couple years. So I know that some people, when they hear the word accelerated, think that within the next 30 to 60 days we have to make decisions, but in fact that's not the case. The way the process works, to my understanding, is that the MSBA has, as Dr. Brunel mentioned, has invited us into the program. And I would also like to point out the fact that each and every step with the MSBA is one of which we only take if there's total agreement with the school committee and the town. There's no financial commitment, there's nothing to move forward unless everyone is on the same page. So even though some of these documents that we've shared with you and may in the future have some financial implications, nothing is committed by anyone in the town of Auburn until there's a vote and approval by both the selectmen and the school committee. And if there's any requirements for additional transfer of funds, obviously that would occur at town meeting. So that, as you probably have before you, there was a letter that was sent to your chairman, Chairwoman, regarding the acceptance into the program with some benchmarks that we, as a school committee have, a school district have to meet over the next several weeks. The first part, and the one that we're here just to give you an overview tonight, is about identifying any potential available or projected local funding. And that is a document that the MSBA is requiring the district send to them no later than July 9th. What that document is, that we presented it to the school committee last night, and we are presenting it to you tonight, is just that. It's available or projected. It's nothing committed. It's just our first analysis. The MSBA would like to know that we are serious about proceeding if in fact we have either projected or available funding. They also give us several opportunities to, if we go forward with this process, to find that funding, whether it's through transfers and/or other funding processes. They actually allow us to put that all together no later than December of 31st of 2015. So once again, an accelerated program where we have to come up with some funding no later than December 31st, which means that there would be at least 3 opportunities at town meeting if there was a request for funding, transfers, or otherwise. The way the process works currently is the MSBA, as I've stated, has invited us into the program. The next step is that once we have acknowledged that we want to participate, there is a commitment that would occur down the road where the school committee in the town would agree to fund the hiring of an owner's project manager, as well as having a feasibility study done on those projects, mainly the roof and boiler at 10 Swanson Road, the current middle school, and at the Bryn Mawr School. In talking with our project coordinator, Kevin Sullivan, at MSBA last week, tried to gauge approximately what that cost would be for the owner's project manager and the funding for the feasibility study. The MSBA has pre-qualified owner project managers throughout the state, and they have a very sophisticated process where they put a name in a hat and pull it out. And they give that owner project manager the responsibility to oversee the projects in the Auburn school system. Their contract with the owner's project manager is not to exceed $15,000 regardless of the number of projects that a school has. So in this case, because we have 2 roofs and a boiler, it could be under $15,000, but the maximum that they would allow for reimbursement under that process would be the $15,000. The feasibility study is one that is based on the size, square footage of the roofs, the age of the boiler, and there is no limit as far as that process. However, in going over previously approved accelerated programs with the MSBA, we looked at those districts that had participated last year with roofs of similar sizes as well as boilers of similar age, and we guesstimated at this point that between the owner's project manager of $15,000 not to exceed, and then the feasibility studies that would have to occur after that, that the maximum exposure theoretically to the town and to the district would be around $50,000 to $55,000, depending on what would have to occur at that point. So, as I said, the first request is from the MSBA for us just to provide some available projected local funding to them by July 9th so that they know there is a commitment from the town and from the district. Then the next process would be to identify those funds in order to pay for the owner's project manager, as well as a feasibility study. We currently are looking at whether or not current capital improvement funds that have been earmarked in the past for the roof rehabilitations at both those schools, if some of those funds could be used. We recently sent the town's bylaws regarding the CIP to bond council to get an understanding of whether or not that could occur. In talking to Unibank, our financial advisor today, they said many towns do utilize CIP funds with major projects such as that, since they are more than just having a repair done. They're having a complete roof redone as well as a boiler. So we're in that process of determining where those funds would come through. And as I said, this is the first of many, many steps that will occur over the next year and a half. Once again, ultimately requiring both the district and the town to be in total approval before moving on to the next step.
Questions, comments? Mr. Holstrom?
Yeah, excuse me, through a chair. The roof project at the middle school, Is that going to entail the outbuildings out back also, or is that going to be just the main building itself?
Main building.
Just the main building, okay. And the heating system for that building is for just the main building? Will there be additional capacity in the boilers for heating the outbuildings, or will it be just for the main building itself?
Expert is coming to.
Thank you, Mr. Fahey, for coming to the
You're
microphone.
welcome. Through the chair, Mr. Holstrom, to answer your question, regarding the heating system at the middle school, the boiler, the second boiler that we're looking to replace is a forced hot water boiler that is being used as a backup to the current Baderas boiler that we just replaced probably 4 years ago. That has no effect on the modular classrooms, which you're referring to. The modulars are separate, they have separate rooftop units and they're electric heat.
Okay.
So my understanding, MSBA does not reimburse for modulars.
Thank you.
Are there any other? Mr. Simonian?
What is the reason for the feasibility study? I don't mean to simplify it. I'm asking the question because, to me, feasibility study is usually to provide some sort of project scope. And it seems fairly simple that if the roof needs to be replaced, it needs to be replaced, and if we need a boiler, we need a boiler. Why does someone have to come in and tell us that? So I'm asking the question, what is the purpose of the feasibility study?
Through the chair, I can only relate to my previous district where we participated last time in the accelerated program. I think part of the feasibility study is that not only does it just surmise that you're going to replace the roof, but they look at other things like insulation, they look at supports, they look at other things to determine whether or not it's just the roof that needs to be replaced. If it was simply just the roof, to take the roof off and replace it. I know in my previous district, we had glue lambs that were rotted, we had insulation that didn't meet code, so that it's my understanding is a feasibility study is to hone in on the exact amount of work and the price that is going to be associated with it to do the roof replacement. They don't look at it just as a roof replacement, but looking at the whole scope. Ultimately, they look to replace the roof and extend the life of the building up to 50 years, and that's why they apparently utilize the feasibility study to go beyond just replacement.
Mr. Simonian?
Through the chair. So, thinking from a taxpayer standpoint, this is where this doesn't make sense. Because you said if we opt in, we potentially are on the hook for about $55,000 for the project manager and the feasibility study. And we have, I know you said it's not fixed or committed or anything, but we have some information here in front of us of potential costs that we know right now. So we could invest this $55,000, knowing that, we at least have an idea of what we're gonna spend for what we know. And after we've already committed $55,000, they could come back and say, well, in order to do this right, you've got to do insulation, you've got to do all the other things you mentioned. And now at that point, we kind of have passed the point of no return, because it's either go to the taxpayers and say, hey, we're not going to do this because of the cost or whatever it is, but we already invested $55,000 of your money, or we have to follow through whatever they say. And then the other side of the coin is it's going to cost us actually this much more because all these other things have to be done. And I'm not, it just doesn't make sense to me when you go through some of these processes, and I know that common sense and government don't always go hand in hand, unfortunately. It just doesn't make sense, to do it that way. Why aren't we able to, if we have an expert, or if there's a contractor or something that we could hire for, a lot less than this. A building is a building to a degree, to come in and say, all of these things are definitely going to have to be replaced, because, if you're going to put a roof on, it doesn't make any sense to put this brand new roof, have all these other issues and things that either A, may not be up to code because the building's so old, or just because it has to be done. You're going to put in the building, put on the roof, put on the boiler, and you're still going to be, wasting all this money and energy costs because, you need more insulation and all those other things that you mentioned. So I'm just asking the question because, again, it's one of those things that makes no sense to me, that it seems so simple that you could just find an expert who would do it for X amount of dollars and then present it to MSBA and say, look, we already know this, we don't need to spend $55,000 for a feasibility study. So,
Dr. Brunel?
Through the chair, I think, just to use some round numbers, and these are very rough guesstimates, they could be off, but, so to replace the middle school roof could cost $1 million to do that. So in order to reap the benefit of MSBA paying $500,000 of that cost, there are rules and regulations that we need to follow. So this is one of those steps, because you're absolutely right that we could go through this process and outlay a certain portion of money, and Mr. Gray has given an estimate, but it's really the long-term benefit. And to the point that you raised, I think we probably could go out and get experts, and Mr. Fahey being one, and he has contacts as well. But in order to guarantee, to the degree you can, the extension of the life of this building, and the school department has made a commitment to the 10 Swanson Road building as well as to Bryn Mawr School, to be able to have that be in existence for 40 or 50 years, it may require that additional insulation. That's what feasibility is going to decide, will determine. But honestly, at the end of it, it's that $500,000. It's the 50% reimbursement that we could get that ultimately would be seen, I think, as a substantial savings to taxpayers.
so is it only the roof and the boiler that reimbursement is eligible? Because then if we do have to do all this other stuff and that's not,
Sure.
and that's not eligible for reimbursement, we could still wind up spending that $1 million. And granted, I understand, saving the $500,000. I'm not trying to put you on the hook
Sure.
for it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
That, groups like this have, rules and policies and ways you do it when it seems like you do it all simple. And I have no doubt of the qualifications that Mr. Fahey could absolutely do a lot of it, or, knows people who could. It just really seems,
Yeah.
this is the kind of stuff that the taxpayers look at it and shake their head and go, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
Dr.
So,
Brunel?
So I think, in terms of if we stay with the current middle school, we've designated, and town meeting was overwhelmingly supported, the transfer of some CIP funds that had been designated particularly for Julia Bancroft and Mary D. Stone that'll eventually come offline. Through the work of the master plan team, we have $1.8 million that we're putting into renovations of that building, and the purpose is to extend the life, to ultimately save taxpayers money over the long term. So I think that this really is just another investment that we're looking for MSBA to make, and we couldn't, as a district team, turn away the potential of getting 50% reimbursement from the state. So there are some hoops that we need to jump through. We're not yet making a financial commitment, but we believe it does make sense for this district long-term to continue to pursue this. But I understand your concerns.
okay.
All right, Mr. Carpenter?
What is it that you need from the board tonight?
We really are here just to update you on this information. You needed to give initial approval back in the late winter, so we wanted to update you on this process. We've committed to doing that throughout each step, Mr. Carpenter, and to all members of the board. So as it says in the letter, actually, that was received back in early June, and this was from from Mr. McCarthy, the executive director. He wanted to emphasize that this invitation to collaborate on a feasibility is not approval of a project. They're strictly inviting us to say, let's work together to determine what the next steps will be. So once we know that information, we will come back and share that with the board as well.
I was just concerned because I just got this tonight, so I didn't get a chance to look at it. But
Okay.
I have followed the master plan process that I know Mr. Fahey is a part of, and as well as yourself. So I know you have gone over the buildings and you have done your due diligence to try and figure out to what extent we need to
Right.
put these in usable fashion. So I appreciate the work of
Thank you.
everyone to get this project going. Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
I will pass that along.
Anything else from board members? Did you have anything else?
No?
Thank you so much for
Thank
the
you
update.
very much.
Thank you all for coming in.
One final
Mr.
thing I will
Fahey?
say, this is Mr. Gray's final meeting. He
I
is
had
heading
heard,
to
yeah.
Carver as the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Finance, so I just wanted to publicly thank him for that.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your new
Congratulations.
position.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have no communications. The next item are Board of Selectmen general items. We have interviews and potential appointments. First up are the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think we'll go in the order that are in our packet, so we're not flipping through.
Okay?
So we have the applications in your packet. The first up is Mike Robidoux. Mr. Robidoux, if you could come up to the table, please. You're welcome to come right up here. If you just want to
Good
give your
evening.
name for the record, and you can
Mike
make a little
Robidoux, 81
opening
Bancroft
statement if
Street.
you'd like.
81 Bancroft Street, Auburn.
Okay. Did you want to start with an opening statement or go directly to questions?
Directly questions, whatever
Okay.
they have.
Questions from members. Who wants to go first?
Can you hear
Are
me
we
now?
prepared for our ZBA questions? Mr. Simonian will go first.
Well, I would have preferred a little bit of an introduction, so I'm going to ask you. What qualifications do you have that you believe would relate to this position that you're applying for?
Qualifications, well, I built the property at Mill Street in Auburn, 34, 8 years ago.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to ask, please speak up. That air conditioner
And
is
if-
just killing us over here.
And I'm going to ask you to just pull your microphone
Oh,
closer
yeah,
to
I'm
you as
sorry.
well.
My fault.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, just speak up.
I built the property at 34 Mill Street 8 years ago, and I also built 1147 Main Street in Worcester 12 years ago. Actually, 14 years ago. And I learned a lot in the process on what you had to do and what you have to go through. So, with that being said, I also watched the zoning board meetings and watched how they operate.
As a business owner, just roughly, how many times would you say you've appeared before the zoning board?
Twice?
So you're at least familiar with?
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that people who sit on boards and committees should at least have a good working relationship with each other. And I guess there's really no way to tap dance around this, because everyone is aware of past history. I'll leave it at that. So I'm just going to ask you straight out, given things that have been said, heard, whatever, how do you feel that you'll be able to work well with the board and do the business of the board? Keep personal, I mean, we heard previously from Mr. Wade, keep any personal, feelings towards anyone who appears before the board out of it, and just do the right thing by the law.
And that's what I plan on doing if I'm elected.
Explain to me how
Appointed,
that
I'm sorry.
happens.
What happens? If you're appointed
Explain to me
to a board,
how you do that.
well, you work with the other board members and you make your own judgment on what you think is right and what is right for the town. And that's what I would do.
Okay, fair enough, thanks.
Anything else, Mrs. Simonian? Who wants, anyone else with questions? Mr. Holstrom?
Excuse me, through the chair. There's a lot of bylaws, regulations. Have you been able to understand what the process is and how they will apply? And can you be objective, putting those rules and regulations, bylaws in place for whatever issues come forward to you?
Yes, what I plan on doing is if I'm appointed, I'll look at the bylaws with each applicant that comes forward, and I'll study what's the law on the bylaws in the town of Auburn, study them together and make sure it's the right answers.
Through the chair, are you able to make those decisions with the bylaws objectively or
Yes.
without any prejudice?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Carpenter?
Thank you for applying, Mike.
Thank you, Dan.
Quick question. I asked this of Mr. Marin, who I feel bad he is here, and I know Steve might have had questions for him, so he wouldn't necessarily have to sit through the whole process. We could have asked him up, but the ZBA is a very important board, has a lot of work, a lot of homework with it. How much time do you think we should reasonably expect you to spend weekly? You're going to have site visits, there are going to be training opportunities on the weekends and in the evenings. Will you be prepared to go to all that?
Yes, I am. I'm prepared.
Any other questions? I have a couple for you that I've asked other applicants. So as you know, the ZBA is a regulatory board whose decisions are appealed through the courts, not through
Right.
another body. Do you have any concerns with being named a defendant in an appeal, should it go to court?
No.
Is my first question. And the second question is, as the appointing authority, I've suggested it before, and I will suggest it to whomever the new chairman is, because we know Mr. Coleman will no longer be chairman because he has resigned. I've long felt that the Zoning Board of Appeals should be willing to meet twice a month so that an applicant, generally the decisions aren't made the first month. They come back to the second meeting, sometimes the third meeting, which puts you 3 months out, and then a 20-day appeals period, which could potentially, close to another month. So someone could put an application in and not be able to take action for 4 months. Do you have any concerns with meeting twice a month if the board so desired?
No, if we decide on a meeting, that's fine.
Okay.
Move the process along.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? Do you want to say anything?
Nope, that's all I have to say, I guess.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, before we go to the next person, because Mr. Marin was here last time, and I know Steve didn't have an opportunity to ask him any questions, could we take him out of order so that he may want to sit through the meeting, but it'd be nice to give him the opportunity if he...
Mr. Barrett, if you want to join us, because you were here at the last meeting, what I had said at the last meeting is members all had an opportunity to ask questions, and Mr. Simonian was not in attendance at the last meeting. I don't know if you had the opportunity to review the
I saw the
tape.
questions that were asked.
Okay.
And I really just have one, and similar to what I asked Mr. Robidoux, and I've asked this in the past, I've read your background. I watched the previous meeting that I was unable to attend, so my question is this. The experience that you have, the things that you've already talked about, how does that relate to the zoning board? How does that, what expertise do you bring to that board that, qualifies you to be on the board?
Oh, good evening, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to address your questions directly. I'll take your question in two parts. I own a few pieces of property in a couple of different municipalities, in addition to my home here in Auburn. And I've got an interest in property management, rental property, as well as residential. So I've been in front of, in a couple of different municipalities, as I mentioned last time. I've been in front of the zoning board successfully in other municipalities. I understand the communication that takes place in that environment. From an expertise perspective, my professional life, I work within a heavily regulated environment in the pharmaceutical industry. And so to my responses last time regarding, being in a regulatory type of environment, the bylaws are likened to a lot of the things that we the walk-in and clinical research. And so it's certainly a different industry, but the most important thing to me, I think that's relative, is in a couple of things that have been mentioned tonight, is that open communication on a board, making sure that you're making the right decisions in an unbiased way. And so I've never served on a board before. I would be naive to that, and I spoke to the training that I would look forward to. But I think the technical aspect of it is something that it really interests me. I'm an engineer and chemist by training, although I don't do any of that real work anymore. But the tedious nature, I'll just say in a respectful way, the tedious nature of the bylaws. And there's another, I believe, I did some research after the last meeting that I think there's a bylaw review committee I'd be interested in getting involved in that as well. But the tedious nature of the regulations and how you walk through that language is something that's very likened to what I do professionally. And then I've just got a personal interest in managing property, and I've done that for many years.
Okay, and just a follow-up question, you said you own property here in town?
Yeah, well, we reside in town, so I own my property.
I meant did you say you owned other properties besides where you reside?
That's correct, yes.
Wait, are they, and
Not in town, no.
Oh, okay.
No, apologies. I have a couple of pieces of rental property, and well, if it's of interest, a couple of pieces of rental property that I grew up in one and bought the next one to protect it so that it wouldn't be landlord unoccupied. So I've got a couple of 4 families in Worcester that I manage. One is an emotional property because we grew up there, so I manage that one pretty closely. And I've got a couple of pieces of property in southern Maine.
That's fine. I would just, if you had any here in town, I was just going to say, do you foresee any potential for a conflict of interest, and how would you handle that? So if you want to answer the hypothetical.
I appreciate that.
If not.
I don't anticipate a conflict of interest in any way, and I don't have a business in town per se, but I think in watching the zoning board, and I know that there's been a great deal of discussion historically, I would look to bring kind of an unbiased approach to just what's in front of me. I know we talked a lot about, or a little about, site visits and preparing for cases, those kinds of things. So I would look to be that sponge to make sure that I'm making the right decisions based on the research that we need to do.
I appreciate you coming back. Sorry you had to.
It's my pleasure. No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And next we have Anita, and if I butcher your name, I'm sorry, I only know you by Anita from Santinas. Come on up.
How are you?
Good, good. So do you want to say something before we go to questions?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this opportunity. I know some of your faces as I'm the chair of Rec and Culture and the vice chair of Economic Development. I'm a lifelong resident and now a homeowner in the town of Auburn. So I'm just very excited about this opportunity and think that I have a lot of skills and background that I can bring to this board.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Holstrom first.
Just looking through your, excuse me, it's quite a involved resume that you've provided us here. I've had a chance to look through quite a bit of it, and seems like you're very, very busy. Will you be able to commit the time and required for the Zoning Board of Appeals, and how much background have you had in that type of a board?
I can absolutely make the time. I have great time management skills. I wear a number of hats in the office, in the committee, in the community, and I kind of thrive off of being busy, and I do great at it. I do have some experience just from economic development committees and being involved in other initiatives in the town, and my family owns a restaurant not in town, so I just have a little bit of experience with the family business as well.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Next. Any other questions?
Yes, I have.
Mr.
one, if
Carpenter?
nobody else. Well, first of all, Anita, thank you for applying, and I have the benefit of having served with Anita on the Economic Development Committee, so I have a bit of a, advanced look as to how she will act as a committee member, and I know that she's very conscientious, and so my first question is, are you going to be giving up any committees out of self-interest personally, but will you have to give up any committees in order to make time for this?
If I have to, I would definitely do that, but I don't plan on doing so.
Okay. And you know that the ZBA, and I'll ask the same question as I've asked everybody else, it is a very important board, very involved, a lot of homework, very different than economic development, which has some homework, but there are definite deadlines with the ZBA. So attendance is very important, and I know that historically on the Economic Development Committee, we've had issues with that. So there will be training in the evenings and on weekends. I know you travel a lot for your job, and you're very involved in your job, as well as site visits. Are you prepared or to commit the time to do that if appointed?
Yes, that's why I'm here.
Okay.
Any other
That's all I have.
questions?
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll ask you the same question. Mr. Simonian?
Sure.
As, through the chair, as Mr. Holstrom mentioned, we have your resume, and the application that you filled out, and you've given an extensive background. Couple of things. To what degree are you familiar with? Have you familiarized yourself with how the ZBA operates? And what in this list of skill sets and experience that you've listed here for us specifically translates to the zoning board?
I have a general understanding about the ZBA, and I'm a very fast learner, so I'm willing to take on the challenge for anything that I don't know. And I think as far as my skill set that you asked about that I can bring to the committee are my great listening and communication skills that can help me make effective decisions based on the appeals or the reason that the person is coming to the ZBA.
Thank you. Was very involved in the Facebook page. She actually researched it and did a lot of the due diligence for the Economic Development Committee. So one of the major reasons we're on Facebook is because of Anita, so.
Excellent.
Thanks.
So, as I asked the other applicants, as you're probably aware, that this is a regulatory board that is appealed through the court system. It's not appealed through, internally. Do you have any concerns with your name being attached and becoming a named defendant in a suit if someone appeals to the courts?
No, I do not.
Okay. I mean, the town represents zoning board of appeals, but there are people who are, just have concerns for their family, their property, whatever, being a named defendant. No concern?
No concern.
Okay. And you are precinct 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just point out before Anita leaves that we have Finance Committee applications after this, and we need applicants in 1, 2, and 4, Precinct 4. We have 2 representatives of Precinct 3, so unfortunately, I know you checked off that you'd be willing to serve on the Finance Committee as well, but those by charter have to be by precinct, and so there are no openings in that, and I want members to keep that in mind as well. Did you want to say anything before you go?
I think Mr. Simonian has one more question.
Did you have another?
Actually, I'll let you finish because the question I have is for the chair and the town manager, so
Okay.
please.
No, I don't have any other further
Great.
questions.
Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter raised the question, and actually, it just made me think that, don't we have an existing policy limiting the number of committees that?
We do, it's 3.
To 3?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. So, moving on, we have Karen Blaze. If you could come up. Did you want to introduce yourself and make a statement?
Of course. Good evening,
Great.
Madam Chair. Good evening, Board. My name is Karen Blaze. I am a longtime resident of Auburn, a homeowner for 20-plus years. I know many of you because I'm working on several boards together. I work in town and have for several years and been very active in the chamber and different boards and committees.
Questions? Mr. Simonian?
I'm aware of your qualifications, so I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go to a question similar to Mr. Holster and I asked of Mr. Robert. I know that you served as the chair of the Chamber of Commerce, and during that time, you forged a lot of relationships in advocating for businesses. So my question is this, if you're sitting on the zoning board and any of those people that you've forged those relationships with that you've advocated for in the past, how do you stay objective in those cases?
Well, my position, I work at a credit union, and I have to stay, neutral in those kind of positions too. So I am put in that kind of position a lot, and I certainly feel I can be objective and be fair in each situation at hand.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Yes,
Mr.
thank you.
Carpenter?
Thank you for applying.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Same question as I've asked others. It's a very important board. I know in the past it has had difficulties getting a quorum. That seems to have shrunk in recent years, but attendance for me, as far as appointments, is very important, especially when we have deadlines. So it's very important to be able to show them. They meet monthly. They may occasionally meet more than once a month. Are you able to do that? Are you committed to taking the training and committing the time?
Absolutely. I
to
look
meet
forward to
doing
the
it?
training, actually coming up. And, yeah, absolutely, I can meet, whatever's needed. I'll rearrange my schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, just for the record, I'll ask you the same question. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a regulatory board. The decisions are appealed through the court system. So if, how they're filed, it's versus the Zoning Board of Appeals and the members are listed. Do you have any concerns with being listed as a defendant in a potential lawsuit if one were such filed?
I have no concerns.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? Did you want to say anything before you go?
Just thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Great, thank you for coming in. And Karen is a member of Precinct 5, so although she said she would be considered for another board or commission, she would not qualify for finance right now because we have representatives whose terms have not expired. So we have interviewed any potential new applicants. Next, we have 2 alternates who have been invited. They are serving as an alternate right now and have shown an interest in becoming a full member. And first, we have Megan Roach. Megan, if you want to come up, please. Hi. Good evening. Just
evening.
identify yourself for the record, and do you want to say something first?
Sure. My name is Megan Roach. I live at 10 Windsor Ave. I have been a lifelong member, graduated Auburn High School in '96, and pretty much have lived here ever since, other than college and law school. I'm currently an alternate on the zoning board. I've been on since October of 2013, and I certainly would love to be a full member. I have found the board to be excellent. I think the members do work well together, very helpful, especially for me being a new person on the board. And I find it very interesting, and I really enjoy, I learn something new at every meeting, go home to kind of read a little more and follow up on it. I'd certainly like to be a full member.
Great. Questions? Mr. Holstrom?
Yeah, through the chair. Have you been able to, be involved in the process as a full board member because of an absentee of
Yes.
a member?
I've voted numerous times. I've signed over a handful, probably, I would say, of decisions.
And you've been able to maintain objectivity through all of this? There's rules, regulations, the bylaws, been able to apply those as applicable and be fair throughout the whole process?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Simonian?
Through the chair. So, you were sitting here when Mr. Wade spoke. And I know that in previous, when you came here before the first time, back in the fall, we discussed qualifications, so no need to do that again. But one of the things that typically we've always discussed with candidates is cohesiveness on the board, treating people fairly. We just asked 2 candidates about being objective. And yet, Mr. Wade stood here as a business owner, and it's not the first time, and I know you weren't on the ZBA, other times when he's alleged the same thing.
Yep.
So, how would you respond? Because Mr. Wade is claiming that there's potential that some members of the ZBA may be prejudiced or slanted against him. And how does a business owner in Auburn come before the Board of Selectmen and say what he said? How does the zoning board respond to that as a member, even though you're a part-time member? I just,
Sure. I mean, I can only speak, obviously, as a one member, not for the whole board.
I understand.
And yes, I wasn't on years ago if there was prior issues or complaints. I have no problem putting them on the record. At last meeting on June 19th, there was one person who voted against Mr. Wade's petition, and that was me. Everyone else on the board approved it. He got the variance that he was looking for. I fully stand by my vote of no. And I'd certainly be happy to discuss that further at the appropriate time. But he was allowed his request on June 19th. So to be honest, I would disagree with his assessment. Again, I've only had 8 months on the board, so I don't know what happened prior. I've never seen Mr. Wade in my life other than the other night for the first time.
I'm not asking
I'd
you
have
to
to
answer.
disagree with his assessment,
I'm
I
not
guess.
asking you to answer for the previous time. He
Right.
feels that expectations are being set for him that are not set for other people who are in the exact same area. So that was his contention. I'm not saying it's true or not true. I'm just, for someone to stand up here and say that.
Sure, certainly a concern
Okay.
for you guys to, and like I said, I didn't vote on any prior things that involved him.
Understood.
I know he talked a lot today and even at the meeting about, the precedent of the board and how we vote and certain people get certain things and certain don't, but in my opinion, the board looks at each case separately and that's how we do it. It's not about the precedent, it's about your case, your petition, what you're looking for, and if you don't meet the criteria, then you gotta know.
So I'm just going to jump in here for a second. So before we finish with you, we may or may not make appointments tonight. I was going to say this when we finish, but, Mr. Wade came before the board, made some, addressed some concerns. I don't know if members have had the opportunity, but, and I appreciate your assessment of it, but I don't know if when the time for discussion comes, we may consider holding off these appointments. If board members have a concern, I would encourage them to view, and I believe he was in and it was continued, am I correct?
He was.
He was in, it was continued, so.
It was continued
so
from May.
So I would encourage board members, if we choose to hold these appointments, so that we have the opportunity to view these, so that, we are the appointing authority. If any members have any concerns themselves, then they can discuss them at the time that we make the appointments. Okay.
So it was, just so you know, it was the May 15th was his original date, and then it was continued to June 19th. So
Okay.
you may want to watch both.
Okay, thank you.
The reason for the continuance was the applicant was different than Mr. Wade. And in fact, the brief that was submitted did not address the issues specifically to the request for a variance, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I would agree. At the second meeting, he presented additional paperwork that tried to further his position in the 4 specific criteria.
Yeah, and as I've said, I encourage members to make their own assessment of the situation. So again, we may want to consider holding these appointments until members have the opportunity to address any concerns that they may have. Are there any other member questions?
I have some questions.
Mr.
if no one else has
Carpenter.
any. I have gone over the minutes of the board for the last 2.25 years. That was what was available. And I know that continuances are an issue with this board, and unfortunately, I didn't get to go through the planning board and Board of Health minutes to see if there was anything concurrent, so I think we do have to realize that you are one board of 3 or 4, and that you are not reliant on a business being permitted. There are other boards that have permits and jurisdiction that do continue at various times for their own processes. So I don't think we should be holding the ZBA to an impossible standard. However, in the last 2.25 years, and I understand you've only been on since October, 17 times there have been continuances. On average, there's been 3 meetings every meeting, and without fail, one of the meetings gets continued. So my question as a member, how do we get that number down?
Well, I think in the short time that I've been on, the continuances that I've seen are typically granted to allow the petitioner to either make a change to the bylaw that they are actually filing under, or to provide additional information, such as Mr. Wade and such as the middle school had brought one a few months back. To be honest, I think usually when it is continued, it's to the advantage of the petitioner to help them to get us either some more information, and we usually give them the option if they'd rather continue it or if they want to take it back and start over onto something new or different. But I certainly don't think the continuances are putting the petitioners at a disadvantage.
Yeah, and most of those, after 2 meetings, they're approved. There's only been 3 times that they went to 3 meetings, so
No
certainly
surprise.
I don't think the board is abusive of the process. And to your point, there does seem to be a lot of discussion, and I know historically, there's been concern over what bylaw or what section of the bylaw people are filing under. Why is there so much conversation? Why is it so difficult for applicants not to be filing? It seems like it comes up quite frequently, that the applicant is told that they aren't filing under the proper section of the bylaw.
I'm not sure I can answer that because they don't come to us to pick the section or to file. I know that the building inspector helps, and I can't say enough about how great I think he is. He is very helpful. He attends all our meetings. And I know he usually sits with the initial petition to figure out where they should. Sometimes the switch in the section we feel is more appropriate, but I personally, and no one on the board has anything to do with what section they choose to file under from the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there other questions? Megan, I know you're already serving, and I believe I asked you this question, but I'll just for consistency ask about being a regulatory board, you know, and as you're aware, not just the ZBA, but individual members are named as a defendant in an appeal. Do you have any concerns with that?
None.
Okay, and I've also, and I apologize to Karen, I didn't ask her this question, but I've long advocated for the Zoning Board of Appeals to meet twice a month. I mean, even if you schedule it, if you have no hearings, you just don't have to have a meeting, but I just feel that rather than having an applicant wait that additional month, I think that you should, you know, I think that it would be best to, as the appointing authority, best that you meet twice a month to give anyone who had a continued hearing 2 weeks rather than the month to wait. Do you have any concerns with that time schedule? Okay. Is there anything else from anyone? Do you have anything you want to say before you go?
No, just like I said, I've been on since October. I think I missed one meeting in February, and I watched the meeting, signed the affidavit, so I could vote at the next meeting for anything that was continued. I do often make site visits. I attended the training at Holy Cross in March, and I definitely feel I'm committed to the board, and I think being someone who is just on, I do bring a fresh set of eyes and unbiased opinion, which can help to resolve any issues. Unfortunately for Mr. Wade, I did vote against him in his last one, but I think it's nice to have somebody new to the board.
And I'll just say that for members who want to watch these, because I don't necessarily get the opportunity to watch them on Thursday Night Live, but they are shown at 6 o'clock in the morning in replay, which is when I see all of the replays for the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I've been very impressed with the work you've, and the ideas you've contributed. So thanks for coming in. Anything else?
Thank you for your willingness to serve, as well as your service.
And next we have Dennis Natoli. Mr. Natoli, if you want to come up and join us. Good evening. Do you want to make an opening statement, or do you want to go right into questions?
I've been currently serving, so I'd be willing to answer any and all questions. You can get as technical as you want.
Okay. Mr. Simonian.
Through the chair, I'm going to ask you the same question, Mr. Natoli, because we've discussed at least 2, maybe 3 times in the 4 years I've been on the board, your qualifications. So I don't need to go through that again. But the same question that I asked Ms. Roach regarding Mr. Wade's comments, how do you address that? Because he seems, he openly stated that he feels he's being treated differently and to a degree unfairly by the zoning board than other people who have appeared before the board.
Well, I think a lot of it comes if you haven't, just not an understanding of what the board's criteria is to prepare a vote, especially for a variance. Okay, there's certain criteria that has to be met. What I've noticed lately, since years, there's more and more applicants coming to the board without an attorney, especially when it comes to a variance. It's really technical. So we used to get briefs that included case law, everything. Now our briefs, basically you see it, is just say, basically I want a variance and nothing else, no criteria. not anything that's in 40A that you need to show in order for legally a variance to be given. So when someone has questions, it's not a personal question, it's everyone has to meet that criteria. So say on Mr. Wade's case, if it was continued, was to get more information, give him the opportunity to look at the criteria with the, that's needed for a variance and answer those questions. I've heard some of the questions. I think the continuances that you usually see are for more information. A lot of them are for peer review, but more is to get more information, so even the chair or whoever's writing the decision can properly write a defensible decision for the town. Because if you cover all the bases and you answer all those questions, should it ever get appeal and you go over to the higher court, you have something to stand on because you asked those questions and those 3 criteria that need to be answered were answered.
Mr. Simonian?
So, the follow-up question based on your answer. Since you said that this is a common thing, and I ask you this because I think it's, 14 years or so?
More like 19, but I'm
19,
not
sorry.
counting.
I didn't mean to rob you of 5. That was not my intention. But to what degree can you, or the board in particular, offer some guidance to these people, again, within the law, without getting, the town into trouble, because I realize it could easily happen, but to facilitate the process or to kind of guide them to where they need to go to get, the right information or follow the process more accurately or any of those things. Is that stuff going on, or is it just, kind of, hey, this isn't correct and you need to come back when it is?
Well, at the time of the hearing, a board member is really not supposed to offer their argument. Okay, you're supposed to listen to the argument and take that point. When someone takes they first file for the variance or a special permit, they're given a package, and I believe it's outlined, and it actually outlines the criteria. Whether they read it and understand it and are able to follow that is another question. Most of the time when there's an attorney, of course they do, and then they understand the process. So, but I don't know if it's the economy or where it is. We're seeing more and more, very few attorneys appearing in zoning anymore. We're almost exclusively that was that way because of the criteria, what's needed to do. But I think the guidance starts at when they first apply. We've had cases where there were wrong filings. There was under the wrong bylaw, something was overlooked. Just if you watch the last meeting, the person they were going for a special permit. They were mistakenly given the information that they had the proper square footage, and they didn't, only because it was a mistake by whoever gave them the information. But we were able to amend it. And so again, so we didn't have to go another month. The filing was okay as far as advertisement, so we changed it from a special permit to a variance. But we see that quite a bit. It's not an unusual situation for wrong filings. It happens a lot. Again, that's something we don't do. No one comes to the zoning board to ask how they file. That's done by code enforcement. But it does happen.
All right, thank you.
Are there other questions?
Do you have a question?
Mr. Carpenter?
I'll ask the same question that I did to Ms. Roach. 17 in 2.25 years, that seems high. And a lot of it does seem to be, I'm not saying it's not justified. However, it does seem, and I know from past experience, there has been this issue with not filing under the right, or in the board's opinion, under the right. How do we fix it?
Well, again, if it's done because there was a misfiling, there's not too much we're going to fix. It depends who's putting the brief together for the board. I mean, we want to get as much information in that brief. A lot of time, we're not getting a lot of the briefs proper these days. They're almost non-existent to most of them. So now when we have to ask the questions and they don't have an answer, we want to give the applicant an opportunity to to come back with those answers. We don't want to deny right there. I mean, the way the criteria is, if you don't have it, the proper thing is to deny at that point, because you can't write a defensible decision without it. So they understand. We try to give them what hardships, and if they don't have it in their brief, and we give them time to research it and come back, because again, we'd like to give them every opportunity to present the proper information.
Do they sit with the building inspector typically, or the building commissioner, or the town planner? I know in the past, the town is the one that does the advertisement. So how much involvement does the office have in, because I know you were chair for many years, so I know you know.
We don't get involved with the application. We can't, because we're like a mini court, okay? So it's like having a juror getting involved with, someone who's going to be coming before the jury. You just don't. You want to stay as neutral as possible. So they speak with the building inspector. They get some guidance there on where they should file. And from there on, what information goes into that is strictly up to the applicant.
But the town does the filing. They do the advertisement, do they not?
They do the advertisement, but say for the brief and the argument for
Well, that's a
the
separate thing.
petition.
I'm more concerned about, we seem to have this issue of, we're constantly amending for a different section.
Absolutely.
If the applicant is coming in and talking to staff, I'm trying to figure out where in the chain we're falling, because the town is responsible for the advertisement.
Correct.
And we notify the abutters. So
Correct.
they're coming in with a set of expectations. So to me, I want to do whatever I can to see how we can avoid that and then not have continuing, if we can, if that's the problem.
Well, as you know, we're an appeals board, so that person has to go first to apply for something and get denied. So at that point, they apply, and he would suggest whatever bylaw they might apply at. But, they're human too. There are mistakes made, and it depends on how much time is actually invested in that actual decision at that point. But most of the time, if it's wrong and we can fix it, and if it's not something that the advertisement is okay, so it's not a fatal mistake as far as our decision would be made, then we can change it at that board, and at that point we do.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Carpenter?
Just thank you for your service and your willingness to continue to serve. Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions for you. Of course, you already know about the regulatory board, but, and we've discussed this as well. And my question isn't a criticism of the board. You just said it yourself, that someone may have filed wrong. So if they were, if they were given bad information and needed to file correctly, I don't want to make that person wait another month. That's why I've often suggested that you meet every 2 weeks. Do you have any concern with that? And is that something that you, if appointed, reappointed, would bring back to the board as a recommendation?
Sure,
First
that
question.
would be fine. We've had many special meetings that we've had to do on, a few construction time constraints that they had. As long as the filing and advertisements are met, the timely fashion, so that's the only thing we have to watch, that there's a certain amount of days it has to be filed and advertised, or else our decision could get annulled. So as long as that criteria is met, we're fine with that.
Okay, and I just have a follow-up, because you are an existing member, and you mentioned attorneys, fewer attorneys showing up, and you mentioned brief, and I've seen in the past, I've watched, as you know, I watch all of these meetings, and you mentioned briefs filed by attorneys. Do you give any extra consideration, you personally as a member, any extra consideration if the applicant has an attorney with them and they've filed a brief? Because I know I've heard many times the board ask for a legal brief.
Well, it makes things easier for the board, because usually, most attorneys, they're municipal law, experts that we've seen lately, who've come. They know the criteria, so their brief is specific to the criteria itself, rather than, issues that are maybe personal, that don't relate to the criteria, which we get most of the time now. Is a lot of the information is not as focused where we need it to be, whereas the attorney's briefs, they'll outline in a brief here's finding 1, here's according to finding 2, finding 3. They have legal argument. There's usually case law that they bring in that actually backs up their legal argument, which helps in our decisions too, because there's case law already. Again, that's the reason why we bought that Mark Bobrowski book. It has case law that we can refer to, but again, that gives more credence to and backup to our decision. Again, it's more defensible for us, so it's a little easier.
So do you believe with certain applications that it should be a requirement to have a legal brief?
Not everyone can afford a lawyer, so I wouldn't want to see that as a requirement.
So I'm back to my original question. Do you give additional credence to an application that's been filed with a legal brief? Because I've seen many meetings that we've asked for the legal brief, and then it just appears to me that the applicant has been sent back for a lot of information.
Again, it all goes back to the information that we need, okay? The argument in the brief has to be specific, and if it's not, then we need that in order to make the decision. Again, those kind of decisions, when you can dot all the Ts, dot your Is, cross the Ts, it makes a stronger defense for the town should it ever have to go into court.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
To that, when someone comes before the board, and I myself watch a lot of meetings because, insomnia is a bad thing, but I've always noticed that the board has tried to assist the applicant, whoever that is. If they've come before this past instance with Mr. Wade, I think the board bent over backwards trying to give the applicant, who is not Mr. Wade, he's the property owner, some guidance that the brief that he prepared didn't meet the legal definition. And I have seen time and again that the ZBA members have always tried to assist and give some general direction without compromising their ethical requirement to stay apart. So, again, this is one board out of 4. I've served on 2 of the 4 boards, so I know exactly a lot of the reason there are continuances, and it is not necessarily board-related. So I think we need to look at the ZBA in the context of the other land use boards and not hold them to a different standard. I really think we need to do that, and I personally, for my own sake, will go through it for an exercise for me as being someone who needs to appoint somebody, but, it is a very technical board, it's a very important board, and I think we need to put them into context. I don't think it is fair to hold them apart from the other 4 boards, or the other 3 boards. I think we need to research, find out what the general gist of those continuances are, and then measure the ZBA and measure them all against that, understanding that they each have their own purviews and everything else. So that's my nickel, and thank you again, Dennis, for all that you've done in the past.
Do you have anything you want to add before you?
No, it's just that I've been on the board. Right now, I probably serve as the person that you see who usually brings up that something's filed incorrectly. I do a lot of research on the filings. And anything that's out of line, I usually bring that up, and we like to correct it so everything is done proper. And those things do happen, but and I think I like the idea that I was also at Holy Cross with Megan, and it was 2 other people from the board. I think that is so important. They don't give those courses, again, a lot, maybe twice a year, so the next one probably won't be for another 8 months. I recommend always for education in the budget to keep that going. It was pretty good this past one at Holy Cross. I've taken probably 19 of those courses. I've taken everyone they've given a few times. I can teach some of those courses at this point, but those are important, and it was great to see Megan there, and I like to see the board that is looking to get the education is really important.
Okay, so I have just 2 more questions regarding your application. One of the questions asked is, would you be considered for another board or commission if needed? And you had checked off yes, but didn't check off any other boards. So my other question is, what precinct are you in South Street?
Precinct 1.
Precinct 1. Okay, Precinct 1. And what are the... And if you need to see the
If
list,
it-
I'm happy
Yeah,
to.
if it- you know, again, I'm interested in the ZBA, maybe planning, but it would be a
Okay.
consideration.
Okay. Thank you so much for
Okay.
coming in. Could I ask the board, I know we have two applicants for finance waiting, but could I ask for a motion for a very brief recess?
Motion to recess.
Second. All those in favor? We're in recess. So I'll call this meeting back to order. I don't want to keep our finance committee member waiting, but I just want members to know that I've asked Mr. Burney after the interview to come up and explain the application process for the ZBA and basically the entire process, who they speak to, so that members know. There's been a lot of questions raised tonight, so I want members to have that opportunity, and also we'll have the opportunity to ask department members what happens when the applicant comes before them. So next we have Finance Committee applications. We had received notice that Mr. Bonifiglio wishes to be reappointed to the Finance Committee, and he was unavailable to attend tonight. He is Precinct 1? He is Precinct 1 representative. The next applicant is Chris Arroyan, who is Precinct 2? 2, right? Come on up, Mr. Arroyan.
My situation's a little unique.
Okay. Well, first have a seat and tell us who you are.
I apologize for not submitting a resume or a detailed thing. My intent, after being appointed to this board in the early 2000s, was to step down. And so after talking with my board, and I want to acknowledge from Kevin and Anthony, we have a fantastic board. I've had the pleasure of working under two phenomenal chairmen in my time on this board. So what I was hoping you would consider tonight, and I can give you a little background about me too, is that you appoint me back to the board until another person from Precinct 2 is available to fill my slot, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
But I've done this now for a long time, and I think it's time for something. I mean, I do a lot of coaching in town, and it's time.
Okay.
So,
Having said that, it's my understanding that a member continues to serve until a new appointment is made, correct?
Until they're appointed or replaced.
Appointed or replaced. So, and I knew in advance that you were looking to leave the Finance Committee, which will be a huge loss, I might add. And my concern is if we reappoint you as a member, then no one will apply. If you continue to serve until
if that's
someone
what you'd like me to
is...
do, then I'll do that. But I didn't know that process.
Yeah.
If you want me to give you a little bit of resume and my background, I will. But
If I can
otherwise,
just
it's up
interrupt
to
you. Mr. Hussey, Mr. Chairman, we generally invite the chairman up to join us, and then we can talk a little bit about the process as well. So if you just heard what I had said, it's my understanding that the member continues to serve until that seat is filled either by appointment or reappointment.
Yeah, I've discussed this with Chris, and I appreciate his effort to stay on the board. We go as dormant as possible in the summer, so the timing of reappointment versus when we're concerned about having a quorum should take care of itself, hopefully into the summer.
Okay. So do members wish to ask questions of Mr. Haroyan? Again, he would continue to serve as a Precinct 2 representative until that seat is, until he's either reappointed or someone else is appointed. As you heard, my concern
Yes.
with reappointing him to the full term is that we may not get another applicant.
Well, we can appoint him to a partial term, can we not? There's no requirement that we appoint
You
him
know,
to 3 years.
I'm willing to step down at any point.
No,
If you had an
we appoint
application
to the
next
full
week,
term.
I'm telling you, I'm standing here, my wife, willing to step down. So you can put me for a term, then I will
Yeah, no, I
That-
believe we have to appoint for the full term. Yeah.
For the bylaws.
Yeah, the bylaw, there shall be a finance committee of 7 voters, 2 of whom shall be appointed annually by the Board of Selectmen for a term of 3 years, and a third appointed every third year for the same term. So,
And if I'm mistaken, there's one other open position. There's 2 open positions
have,
tonight, plus another porn. So if I step down, that's 5 currently members.
Right.
And you need 4 votes. And if one person doesn't come, hence the problem. So again, I'm willing to stay on and work with everyone. Just is there a way to do it?
Mr. Simonian.
It just makes sense, based on that statement alone. If the bylaw allows us to not have to reappoint him for a full term, any partial term, or just let him serve until a replacement is found, I'm fine with that. I think that absolutely makes sense.
Absolutely.
That said, shame to see you go, but I fully understand. Coaching takes up a huge amount of your time, and,
Baseball and soccer this year, so.
yeah, you know what? That's, it's important, though. It's a good thing to do for the community, so thanks for doing that, too.
Thank you.
So if you're willing to serve until we find...
I'm willing to
precinct
serve
2.
until you find a qualified applicant or replacement in precinct 2.
Okay, and...
It just somehow let whatever, and if I need to come back or submit a letter and resign, it can be done.
And
If you want to leave it open, I don't know how you do it, but
I'm sure we can get our press person to put something in our Auburn Mass Daily that we're looking for a precinct 2 representative. Mr. Simonian.
Any of the other people that we've interviewed either
Tonight?
No one is precinct 2?
No one is precinct 2. That's why I was asking as we went along.
apparently it's a tough board to fill. I
Yeah,
guess.
well, I mean, we've all seen the work that you do, and the huge time commitment it is. It is an incredible commitment. So, thank you, Mr. Haroyan.
Thank you.
And Mr. Hussey, if you can stay for a minute. We have no applicants for finance. We've had no applicants. I don't know if members want to wait to interview Mr. Bonifiglio. The chairman is here, who can speak to the work he does, but I would have no concerns with reappointing Mr. Bonifiglio.
I'm sorry, I can speak for Jim. Jim is
Sure.
top quality, very good. Wouldn't highly recommend him.
And we've all had joint meetings. Mr. Simonian.
I don't question that at all, because we've talked to Mr. Bonifiglio in the past. The only thing we've kind of ever given a pass on in situations of people not appearing was the train layers license, and I know they're not the same, but rather than set a precedent, again, it's nothing against Mr. Bonifiglio, I'd just rather have him appear. That's my thought, and just,
So-
for the sake of anyone else who, at least everyone was interviewed, and no one can say, well, it was kind of, already.
So they'll both continue to serve, Mr. Chairman, until
Yeah, we don't
July.
plan on meeting for, I would say, till late July, as we close up the fiscal 14 year anyway, so we certainly have some time. Jimmy's had a busy schedule, with his own thing,
So-
yeah, I'd hope to consider reappointing him. I mean, we've got a unique group on our board, including Chris, and everyone, actually.
Oh, no, again, absolutely.
Adds a hell of a lot to the mix.
I know
that.
Don't take it as a knock in any way.
Yeah, we don't plan on
and if-
reorging anytime soon anyway.
If we don't see anyone, if no one else comes forward, then, we're, if that's the route, then at that point, I'm fine.
Yeah, and my understanding is he's not camera shy, so I'm sure.
We've seen that.
Come backside and get him up in
You know.
front here, so.
And I'll just add that again, seeing all your meetings and having the joint meetings that we've had, you are one of the boards that certainly works well together. And I also want to recognize the Vice Chair, Ann Kavanaugh, who's here in support of her members, I would believe, so thank you for being here. So things are status quo in the Finance Committee. They'll continue to serve until the second Monday in July.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Royan, for coming in.
Madam Chair, can I ask the chairman a question before? Did we
Mr.
agree to
Mr. Hussey.
continue not appointing Mr. Bonifilio? I know Mr. Simonian is in favor of that. Mr. Bonifilio serves on, is the representative from the Finance Committee on at least one or two other committees.
Yeah,
is he
and
not?
thanks for bringing that up. He's probably, at least at this time, the most active of our board members representing other boards and adding a lot of value to those. So, Dan, thank you for stepping that up for us.
Personally, I am comfortable appointing Mr. Bonifilio, having seen the various committees, not only finance, but he's stepped up and served on other committees. I think he always adds something valuable to the conversation when called for, and I think we're lucky to have him. So my vote would be to appoint Mr. Bonifilio tonight. But that's entirely up to the other board members, what they feel. But I really think we should reappoint him. I think he's earned it, and I would like to see that happen.
I would also agree that my vote would go to Ms. Bonifilio, but I agree with Mrs. Simoni. We don't want to set a precedent here of not having someone come in, so whether we need a motion, I would prefer to not set the precedent and invite Mr. Bonifilio in the first meeting in July. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So going back to our ZBA appointments, I know that a lot of issues have been raised. Mr. Bernie, up here, please.
Oh, I can get to sit?
Yeah. So, Mr. Bernie wasn't expecting or prepared to come in for this tonight, so I'm going to ask him to give us a brief summary of the application process, not about specific applications, and then if we need further information, we can either visit the Department of Inspectional Services or ask for information at our next meeting. But a lot of issues have been raised tonight about the application process, who assists with the applications, and what type of guidance they're given. If you could address those as department head.
I'm always happy to answer these questions.
Great, thanks.
So, our office is the front line for handing out, receiving applications. The application and the information packet is also posted on the town's website, so sometimes people will access it that way. We have a form we call the zoning interpretation request form. This is for essentially all requests that people have outside of dimensional requirements for use of property within town, residential, commercial, industrial, everything can be filled out on this form. So when people come in and ask zoning-related questions, they will sometimes have a conversation with myself or the building inspector. We will give them a general breakdown of our understanding of what they're asking and what the bylaws are. The building inspector is the zoning interpretation officer. Anything that I tell people is my opinion, and it is generally clarified that way, and that the building commissioner has the final authority and say. And at the end of the conversation, it's always, here's the zoning interpretation form, fill this out. We take it, we interpret what they have put down as use or desired use of the property. It is then noted on the lower portion of the form if that use is allowed in the zoning district they're located in. If it is not allowed, what permits or approvals they need to get that. It's signed by the building commissioner and returned to them. The information on that form is used to populate the zoning board application. We do tell people that that substitutes for a denial of building permit, because the process of them applying for and having a building permit denied is a lengthy, extensive process that taxes staff time and generally frustrates people who are applying to have to wait for the denial. Included in the packet that they're given when they get the zoning board application is, I think it's 3 or 4 pages of general information on the zoning board process, the costs, and descriptions of the items that are required. Plot plans, a brief to the board. There was a bit of a discussion earlier on what the brief is, whether it's a legal brief or not. My understanding and interpretation is that If a lawyer prepares it, then generally it becomes a legal brief, but it's not required. We inform people of the requirements that Mass General Law has for dimensional variances or the sections that the special permit is under. We tell them in general, these are the kind of things that you want to express to the board, what you want to do with the property, why you can't meet the requirements. What people do with what they submit, we try and limit the amount of specific guidance we give them. We will tell people these are the things that you need. If someone comes in with a brief, we don't read it with them and say, no, you need to change this, you need to change this. At some point, the applicant is required to, stand behind what they submit. We collect that information, we ensure that there's the adequate number of copies, that it is submitted to the town clerk's office. The clerk in my office places the legal ad based on the information contained in the application and sends notice to the abutters on the official abutters list. At that point, it is placed on the meeting agenda, posted, and they move forward from there.
Question on the abutters and the legal posting, the applicant is responsible for those fees?
Yes.
Okay.
They're rolled in when the application is submitted. There is a filing fee, there is an advertising fee, and there is a mailing fee. The mailing fee is, I think we're 96 cents now. It's 2 mailings. It's a pre-meeting mailing and a post-approval mailing, as required by Mass General Law. And the posting is a twice-run legal ad, 7 and 14 days prior to the scheduled hearing.
Mr. Holstrom.
Through the chair, Adam, it sounds like from some of the bits and pieces I've heard tonight, there's been some confusion as to how the bylaws or the state laws are applied in each individual case. If somebody brings an application to you and says, this is what I'd like to do, does the town actually apply the bylaw to the application? Does it give him some direction as to whether the bylaw or that regulation, as he sees it, is interpreted properly? So it sounds like, because there's some continuances going on, that there may be some question about who's interpreting what with the application, with the process, with the project, that type of a thing. Can you shed some light on that?
I think I understand what you're asking. The zoning interpretation form outlines which section of the bylaw what the person has filled out the form requesting would fall under, and that is what should be placed onto the application. I've instructed the people in my office, and I know that the building inspector has also echoed this sentiment. They are not to fill out applications for anybody.
I understand.
It's up to the applicant to do that. So we do provide them the zoning interpretation request form, which should have the information on the building inspector's interpretation of where the use falls within the zoning bylaws.
Okay.
And that is what should be placed on the zoning application. The building inspector is the interpreter of zoning. At that point, that is, as I understand Mass General Law, the town's interpretation of how that use is interpreted under the zoning bylaws. And then it moves to the zoning board for adjudication.
Okay. Just a follow-up. If that be the case, these continuances probably wouldn't happen. Well, there's always something that's going to happen. You're going to need a little bit more information of this or that. But if it comes to you and they have a project they want to get forward, they fill out the application. Well, this is what we're seeing as the bylaw. Well, no, I don't think so. Can they question that? And, just try to...
Can who question that?
Can the town or the party involved with the project, can they question back and forth to the town saying, you know what, I don't think this is where we want to be, and get some resolve before it actually goes into an actual meeting? Because I know all these projects are time-consuming, it's costly if delays come forward. I don't know if...
I guess conceptually it's a hard question to answer.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you can question anything. Ultimately, the building inspector interprets zoning and says, this is where it falls.
Okay.
You may not agree with that. That's a good example of another use for the zoning board. If the building inspector says, a good example is, our bylaws expressly prohibit concrete plants. Somebody wants to put something like a batch plant, where they're really just mixing. Oh, it's not, I consider that light industrial, it's processing, I'm mixing materials. A concrete plant, you're doing crushing and these things. The building inspector may say, no, it's a concrete plant. If you don't like my interpretation, you can appeal that to the zoning board.
Thank you.
So that's one use of the zoning board. For many of the cases that get to the zoning board, there isn't that back and forth. The building inspector's made a decision, the applicant says, great, I'm gonna fill out my paperwork, I'm gonna move ahead.
You answered my question. Thank you.
So, thank you for your willingness to answer some of those questions tonight. So I think there's been several issues raised tonight regarding the application process, the issues, thank you, Mr. Bernie. The issues that Mr. Wade raised tonight, which I can only go by what he said, but he mentioned a potential lawsuit. I don't know if members have had the opportunity to review the tapes that he has, but it would be my recommendation that we hold appointments until members either have the opportunity to meet with inspectional services individually, ask any questions they have about the application process. When is Mr. Antinovica here through?
July 4th.
Mr. Antinovica who's handled most of the applications since he's been here, is here through July 4th. I would encourage members to also meet with him. Not that you weren't helpful, but I agree. He's answered a lot of those questions. I just think, and again, I'm happy to, to have input from other board members. I just think we have more unanswered questions than we do answered questions regarding the Zoning Board of Appeals as the appointing authority. As with the finance, anyone who's seated on the Zoning Board of Appeals would continue to serve, and although we're looking for full positions, the alternates would move into those full positions until we make our appointments. So what are thoughts?
My feeling is, excuse me, I would, if you have some questions about the application process, like we appear to have tonight, I think that to sit and talk with the staff, I think would be a positive step in making the right decisions.
And I would encourage members to review both of those meetings, which I made a note. May 19th and June 15th, which are available if you go to the town's website.
Can I ask a question of the chair?
June 19th, yeah.
We have a business owner who has come before the board. Has this board received a flood of people coming before the board expressing concerns over board members and being treated fairly? Because I again, as I raised earlier, you can't weight one person's opinion over a body of work. So if you have not had a flood of people coming in here, if we do not keep a file of complaints. People may call in, as Sharon says, but do not want to commit it to writing. I mean, if we are serious about this, then we should not accept any complaint unless the complainant is willing to put it in writing with their name and contact information, and that should be kept so that we can, as a board, determine how many times an applicant comes before us or has a complaint and doesn't come before us. I don't think it's fair, and I know this happened last year, Mr. Wade was here as well, saying the exact same thing. Nothing against Mr. Wade, but that's one person versus how many applications they saw, which would be 40, roughly 40 in 2.25 years. If I'm not hearing from people, I'm not going to give one person's opinion a reason to hold up qualified applicants, and it also creates a problem for the board. What if we don't reappoint certain people? Now we have the Mullen Rule. This is going to build in delays. To me, we have a responsibility as board members when we come to a meeting to be prepared and be prepared to make a decision. I think we have excellent applicants. I wish we had more, but my vote is we have excellent applicants. I would rather appoint them tonight, but if other board members are concerned to the extent that one member of the business community comes in and raises a complaint, I mean, that to me, I don't think that's fair to the ZBA. I don't think that's fair to the members. They serve. I've done my due diligence. I'm prepared to vote on who I think would be the best person to serve the community for the next 3 years. But I'll leave it to board members to make that decision.
So I'll just say that although, and again, it's a different, I know the manager deals with it, we all deal with it, people come to us and say things and don't want their names used publicly, but for the record, I can say that I have been contacted by 4 people with concerns, and one recently that I would like an opportunity to contact the appropriate agency to see if in fact there is some validity to it. And this just happened recently, and those people, I actually encourage them to contact other board members as well, because if you don't want your name used, then you need to at least outreach other board members, because it's not, and I'm telling you, because you just discussed it, I wouldn't have said it otherwise. I can't say that someone contacted me and not be able to use their name, but people have concerns. These are people who are probably maybe business owners who may be before ZBA again and just would prefer to bring it to someone's attention but not have their name attached. But like I said, there's been some issues raised here tonight. So, Mr. Simonian.
Yeah, I don't wholly disagree with Mr. Carpenter. But the point that the chair made is fair, and I think that the most recent email that we received from the town manager may have been prior to you being elected to the board, Mr. Carpenter, and I think that might have been the first one, the first time this year, but I do believe there were other email complaints that the town manager came in through the selectman's office, the town manager's office, that she emailed to us. So and that's the reason why partly I asked Mr. Wade if he could provide us with a couple of written examples, because I'd just like the opportunity not only to look at that, but and possibly talk to Mr. Antonovic. I appreciate the comments from Mr. Burney, but also just to kind of digest all of the answers to all of the questions here tonight. So I'm not disagreeing. That's a point well made. But I'd just like a little bit of time to kind of digest it all.
And that's fine. Then can I make a request? If we get complaints in email, because I did ask if there were others, and I got the one email that you're perhaps referencing. We do not keep a file. So it's no good to new members or old members, veteran members, I should say, to not have a file that we can go to and say, if somebody's coming up. And again, my personal feeling is, if you are going to complain about a board, that board deserves to be able to give their side of the story, or those board members. I don't think it is fair that they call us on the phone and don't want to make their complaint public. But yet, we are holding this information apart from the public in the public process, by the sounds of it. And for myself, I'm uncomfortable with that. I don't think it's appropriate for people to be calling us and whispering in our ears about this one or that one. If you have a complaint, you need to come to the office, you need to commit it to writing, and you need to own what you're saying. If I'm going to wait it, because personally, you need to, if it's this much of an issue, you need to stand up, we need to know about it, and it needs to be formal, rather than have a whisper campaign against members. I don't think that's fair to the members. I don't think it's a service to this board or to the ZBA. You know, these people serve in a public office just like we do. They deserve the same respect and courtesy as we expect. And I don't think that at this point, people whispering in certain selectmen's ears is necessarily the respect that these members deserve. So that's my nickel, but it sounds like a majority would like to continue. So
Well, I'm not saying that people are whispering in my ear. They're asking board members to review certain meetings and certain minutes.
But they're not making their comments public, Doreen. They're not coming out and honestly suggesting what it is there are. Mr. Wade, to his credit, comes here and he is willing to own his comments, and he's willing to address this to the board.
I would absolutely agree with you, but as you know, it's,
That a board member does deserve to be able to give their side of the story. And I don't think viewing a meeting and making a decision is without consulting with the member themselves, whether in executive session, if it's an ethical consideration that we have to talk about it. You know, to me, I think they deserve the utmost respect and courtesy, and they deserve to be given an opportunity to share their side of the story as well, because there are two sides to every story. But with that, I don't want to continue the meeting longer than it needs to be.
Anything
It sounds
else?
like a majority of the board would like to hold it, and I am perfectly content to accept the wisdom of the board. Thank you.
are there any other comments?
Just one more. I completely understand your point. And that was really the motivation for me asking the two sitting members to offer their side here in public. And again, it's a tough, I guess it's kind of a tough place to be in, because we do get people who who call us or email us and are willing to put their name out there, and at the same time, we don't. I don't know. It's a tough one, because I would hate for people to think that they couldn't reach out to the board, but your point is also valid. That's a tough one to you know.
Well, if we're considering what they're telling us, then the board member does deserve the right to give comment, and they should be specifically referred to those meetings so that they can prepare and give us thoughtful answers. You know, to me, it isn't fair to, again, have somebody giving a private conversation about a member or members, and then we're going to weight this in our decision, but the board member has no idea that these people have come to us, has no idea, and I don't think that that's fair to them. They hold a public office. They deserve every opportunity to defend their actions, and again, I'm just repeating myself, so
I agree.
I appreciate the board's indulgence, and I'm happy to wait till the next meeting to make appointments if that is
there a
the
motion?
wisdom of the board.
Is there a motion to hold it?
Motion to hold this to our next meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Thank you, everyone, for coming in, and the board will be making appointments at their next meeting, which will more than likely be the second Monday in July. Next item on the agenda is the appointment to the Board of Registrars. Enclosed is the letter from the Auburn Democratic Town Committee putting forward the name of Susan Weigel as their designee on the Board of Registrars. As you recall, we made a temporary appointment of Joseph Martin for the recount, but that was only through the recount. So you have the letter in your...
Point of order, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Does Ms. Weigel have to be here, as we said that other appointments, we expect people to appear? Is this covered by the policy, or is it? I'm perfectly content.
It's an appointment as a designee recommended by the Auburn Democratic Town Committee. Hence, the Republican Town Committee would bring forward their recommendation as well. So they've basically, they have a representative on their committee, so...
I recall I was that representative, Madam Chair, so I'm aware of the process. I was just asking,
Yeah.
if we're asking other applicants to appear before us, do we need to ask this person?
No, we don't. We just asked for a designee.
Then I would make a motion to appoint Mrs. Weigel to represent the Auburn Democratic Town Committee as a registrar in the town of Auburn.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Thank you. The next item we have is gift acceptance, and we have CCW Realty, 20 Park Ave in Worcester, office furniture for municipal offices, and that's in the value of $1,000. Ms. Jacobson?
Through the chair, thank you very much. We were contacted recently by the new owner of 11 Midstate in the Midstate Office Park, and they purchased the building, and they're starting to market the space for lease again. And the prior tenant, who was in there had left a lot of office furniture, desks and file cabinets and a few tables, and they were kind enough to contact the town to see if we had any use for them, and we absolutely do. So we asked them to put an estimated value on it. Quite honestly, I think this is a very low value. Purchased new, the desks and furniture that they're giving us are probably, we figured, well over $5,000. But it is used furniture, so it is discounted. So I think they're being conservative in their donation. But we would like the opportunity to take this furniture. We have a lot of needs in town. Some of the desks that they offered us were much too large to actually fit in some of our rooms, because the rooms are smaller. It's an older building, but some of the furniture may actually go very well in the library. We're looking at something that potentially could be used there. I know our assessor's office, a number of offices in Town Hall are going to utilize some of it. The Department of Inspection Services has needs, so it really is a help to us.
Don't give them anything.
Are there any questions on the gift? Mrs. Simonian?
Is this form downloaded from the website?
Through the chair, I think I just noticed
Okay,
it. It is
all right.
downloaded from the website, and the
That's fine.
treasurer's name on it. She did retire, and we need to replace I just circled it right before this item came up. I just noticed it. Thank you.
Make a motion that we accept this generous gift with gratitude.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. We have no proclamations. The next item is discussion and vote on setting a summer meeting schedule. So the first issue is the fifth Monday in June. As you heard, the attorney said this isn't time sensitive. We have nothing on the agenda at this point. There will be no hearings because the time has passed to actually advertise for the hearings. So we wouldn't be holding an applicant up for a hearing because there wouldn't be the time to advertise. So first, I would ask the board to consider not having the June 30th meeting. And there may or may not be members on vacation that day anyway, so we may not have a quorum.
My availability on the 30th is the end of fiscal year, and I have to be on site to make sure that the Commonwealth gets every penny before they rest, before midnight. So I
And
don't
Mrs.
know that I'd
Brotherton
be
is
able
not
to
available.
make the meeting pending all sorts of financial shenanigans, which are not
Okay.
really illegal shenanigans, but system issues that tend to delay us well into the night. So I would also like to, if we have no business, to skip that, just so that I don't miss a meeting.
Typically, hearings are things that are time sensitive and been a criteria for meeting on the fifth Monday, so if there's none of those pending,
Right,
then really.
right. There's been no, I confirmed that with Sharon, that nothing has come in prior to tonight. So unless so I'll entertain a motion not to hold the fifth Monday of the month meeting
So
unless
moved.
an urgent matter arises.
Absolutely. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. And also, I was reminded that we had set last year a summer schedule where, again, members may or may not be on vacation, but we could possibly consider holding the first meeting in July and the first meeting of August, unless any urgent matters come up. Then we would meet the fourth meeting in July and/or the fourth meeting in August.
So if we have business, we will be called.
If we have a hearing,
If we do not have business, we
right,
can enjoy
kind
the
of on call.
decision. Make a motion that we follow board custom as outlined by the chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do you have discussion?
No, just the question of when these meetings are going to be. We're talking about the fourth
So,
week.
so we meet on the second and fourth Mondays of the month. So in July, we would meet on the second Monday, which our first meeting of the month. In August, we would meet on the second Monday, which would be our first of the month. If needed, we would have the second meeting of the month, which would be the fourth Monday.
That's
But
fine.
that would only be if there was a hearing
Yeah.
application, correct?
Yes, I'm just looking, so
Can
that
you
would
give me
be
the dates?
July 14th and August 11th, and let me just
August
verify and
11th,
look
I
again.
will be on vacation myself, but
Is there anyone else who has a conflict for August 11th?
No, my vacation goes the 16th through the 25th.
Okay, so the appointments will be made at that point.
okay.
So, So does any member have an objection to setting a summer schedule of July 14th and August 11th unless there are any applications for a hearing filed or urgent business to be addressed?
Do my motion to follow board custom as outlined by the chair.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, so voted. Thank you. Of that, next item, we have a town manager items, and we have the 121 Southbridge Street, former Scavone property. In your packet, you have a PowerPoint presentation that Mr. Bernie is about to review with us.
And through the chair, just, Mr. Bernie's going to go through the whole process, but I just, especially for our new member, just to bring everyone up to speed, but actually our new member's well familiar with it because he's on the, he chairs the Economic Development Committee, but we did, Adam will go through the process, but we did put the 121 Southbridge Street property out to bid twice, and Adam will go through that timeline. Under the charter, the town manager has the ability to put a property out for bid, and we already have a vote under town meeting. I think it's Article 6, I could be mistaken, but it's every year that allows us to dispose of property that was taken by tax title. So the town meeting vote's already in place. The town manager's role in this is to prepare the RFP, put it out, evaluate the proposal that comes in, and select the purchaser, and then the Board of Selectmen's role is to vote to transfer the deed. So that is why we're here tonight, and Mr. Bernie, who's been very involved in this process, has a presentation.
Hello again. So Julie told me to make this as long as possible, so I added about 20 slides this afternoon, so buckle up. 121 Southbridge Street, I think we're all aware of where it is. It is that building that everybody goes, gee, who owns that on Southbridge Street? It's right across from Sword Street, and I can never remember the name of the plumbing company. They had a collapse Julie's first year here. The winter we had all that heavy snow. And Shepherd Envelope, the site you can see, I wish I'd brought my laser pointer, but this very large building that's labeled 132, which you probably can't read. That site surrounds the Scavone property, or 121 Southbridge Street. You'll notice that lovely cluster of trees with some buildings growing out of it. That's an aerial photograph from, I believe, 2009. It's a 138 feet of frontage. It's about 3/4 of an acre. It has 2 buildings on it now. At one point, it also had a trailer. It has a split-level home, quote-unquote, in the back, and a garage. So it has consistently been used as a commercial property, and it's highway business zoned. I'll try not to read the slides to you. This is all the previous owners. As you can see, prior to the town of Auburn owning it, it's been owned essentially by construction or concrete companies. The understanding is that these companies in general use the property for office, vehicle storage, and maintenance, and so that'll come into play as we look at the reportable environmental conditions. In 2010, the town received the services of a licensed site professional, or LSP, through the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission's Regional Brownfields Program. They came out and did what they call a Phase 1 assessment. If anybody's ever purchased commercial property, it's also called the 21E. It's a records and historic use review of the property for potential issues. It came up with 5 what they call reportable environmental conditions. None of these are confirmed, and the ones that are on this site are of relatively minor significance. Again, any reportable environmental condition is significant. Solid waste and surface debris, I'm sure none of you are new to town. You all know what the site looked like 4 or 5 years ago. I think that solid waste and surface debris is probably an understatement. There was a number of old vehicles, scrap metal, concrete pipe, other miscellaneous debris strewn about the site from when it was essentially abandoned by the previous owner. The historic use of the site, as I mentioned, it was a vehicle storage and repair facility for many years. There's lots of nasty stuff in vehicles that are stored and repaired, so just the fact that that was the use is considered a reportable environmental condition. There is always the possibility of a release when you have that type of use, so they are required to include that. Upgradient Mass DEP regulated site. The Shepherd Envelope site has a DEP number, which means there was a release of some sort. That does not mean that any of that potential or historic contamination has made its way to 121 Southbridge Street. What it means is groundwater and general overland flow comes from that site. If we go back here, it's coming from the right of the screen to the left of the screen. So the larger parcel has the contamination and is regulated by DEP, and there is always the potential that something like that can, what they call plume, essentially groundwater flow underground. Floor drain, there's a floor drain in the building. Not an uncommon thing from 1950s to today. The fact that it's there in and of itself could potentially have led to contamination. Again, there's no evidence. There's nothing that appears to be a dry well. It appears to travel off-site to sewer. They were unable to verify that. Thus, it becomes a reportable environmental condition. And floor staining. Anybody who owns a garage and has a car that's more than 5 years old has had a stain on their floor. When you have, we found a Mack truck in that lot that was a 1956 Mack truck. They leak. Oil stains concrete. Again, there's no evidence that it penetrated the concrete, but it has stained it, so it sticks into the reportable environmental conditions. All of these things inform what the reasonable sale price of a property like this might be. Previous conditions. Here is some of the lovely surface debris that I was speaking about. You'll notice there are several Volkswagens, some old trailers, truck beds. I would consider this to be a mild representation. If I had been able to take a 360-degree photo, you'd probably not want to look at it. This is the existing conditions. The picture on the left is actually standing essentially on the property line at the rear. You'll see that, as I said, there's a split-level house which is fitted out to operate like an office. It has considerable damage and needs considerable repairs. Broken windows, I believe the copper was stripped out of it. The town, I don't even believe, has a key to the building. So we are currently just making sure people don't get into it. And then you can kind of see the garage a little bit. You see a little better looking from Southbridge Street west. The somewhat driveway, and the building is brick. It's a slightly canted roof, large windows, very standard industrial building from that time. A little bit clearer. You can clearly see the condition of the building. Unfortunately, the town owns it, and when people say who owns that building, we kind of have to say, sorry, we do. So the bid process. The town has owned this building since 2001. It was taken for tax title. We've kind of been sitting on it, and it's been hanging out for a long time. It was used as random storage for the school department. I think there was a police department or an ex-police department vehicle. DPW had a few things in there, but it was really just sort of convenient, out of sight, out of mind. In September of 2013, we put together an RFP. Julie, myself, and town council worked to put it together. We issued the RFP. We got no bids. I don't even think we had any interest. I don't think anybody took the bid out. So we sort of doubled down. We got the word out through the Business Roundtable, through the Chamber of Commerce, through some commercial realtors that Julie and I have had dealings with. Hey, we have this property. We're going to put an RFP out. Be on the lookout. We did speak with the adjoining property owner. He was mildly interested. In the end, I don't think it ended up working out for him. So we reissued the RFP in March. We added an addendum in April. There were some minor procurement things that we needed to add. We added those things. We extended the deadline to May 15th. At that point, we opened the bids, or the bid. We had one, but it was a qualified bidder. C&M Tree and Landscape. They are currently located in the city of Worcester. They are renting space. They're a full-service commercial landscape and tree company. They service three of their major accounts are in the town of Auburn: Polar, Atlas, and Reliant. Plus, they do Midstate and some other smaller commercial businesses. They've been in business for 18 years, 5 full-time employees, family-owned. In the summer, they grow to, well, I would say, I guess spring to fall, they have 20 seasonal employees. They'll be looking to rehab the building. It'll be their world headquarters, such as it is. They will look to repair both buildings, bring them up to a functional standard and an attractive standard. I would think that if you're going to want people to have you come and landscape, you're going to make your property look pretty snazzy. So we would see some significant turnaround. They're looking at installing a fence around the property for security and privacy purposes of the surrounding area. They're looking at the potential of a retail component as they get situated and start operating. I don't believe they're looking at a garden center, more of a material retail, mulch, bark, that kind of stuff. And they're looking to rehab and be occupying within 6 months. So they're looking to get in there and get this thing moving. And that would be 6 months from closing, which is a little bit off. Here we have 5 properties in the same Southbridge Street corridor of reasonable comparability. There isn't a lot of 3/4 acre parcels with a 5,000 square foot garage and a 2,400 square foot house on them. These are properties that are currently operating or are in reasonable condition, and these are the assessed values. So Chieftain's Liquor, we all remember what that looked like about 5 years ago. It's now worth over $500,000 in assessed value, and the taxes that come from that. And that's all before we get into the product they have inside and whatever taxes they pay on that. 208 Southbridge Street is the former Napa Auto Parts. They have moved across the street. That building is currently for sale or lease, but it's valued at almost $450,000. You can read these. I mean, we're not looking at small dollar value properties. One can reasonably assume that the value on the Scavone property right now is just for the land. Those buildings hold very little value from an assessment point of view, and any work put into them is only going to increase the value of that property and is only going to dress up that corridor. Final bid was $50,001. That $1 was really what pushed us over the edge. They have given us a deposit amount of $5,001. They're not looking to finance any of the purchase. They're looking to do it wholly out of pocket. They have the funds to do so. And as I said, they're a family-owned company. They have no investors. It is a husband and wife who own and manage the business. So there's no major corporate structure to deal with. It's, we can call the Lazuskis and we know that we're going to get an answer from them. So what's next? After my rousing presentation, the Board of Selectmen would be the authority who would sign the deed in order to move the transfer forward. We would finish with the property closing with Attorney Hennigan, the Lazuskis, their attorney. We would get their cash, they would get their deed, and they would move on to permitting, building upgrades and retrofits. They would do their construction, and they would be operating.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Compton?
Adam, as you call it, surface debris, as part of the RFP, is the landscape company responsible for clearing and cleaning it up and putting it in? They're bearing that cost, or is that something?
Yes. You'll notice in the current site pictures, I mean, there's some grass and stuff. The majority of the trees have been cleared by the DPW. That was done as a security issue. We did have, I believe, more than one break-in to both buildings. So cutting the trees was, it helped give some visibility, and it also showed the actual size of the site. It's a relatively sizable site, but yes, we're selling it as is. So they give us money, here's your deed, that site is what it is, and you can go ahead and start to move your cleanup process forward.
Second question, and it could be for the manager as well. Do we have a use or something for the $50,000? Are we putting that in stabilization? Have we gone to that level where we're thinking what we're going to do with that, with the funds from that?
Yeah, through the chair, not at this point. It is my understanding it would have to go into the general fund. We do have there were very modest costs that would come out of it. You know, we generally would try to debit against the advertising costs and anything that went into the sale of the property. But at this point, it goes into the general fund, and then any recommendation for use of those funds in the next budget cycle will come back to the Finance Committee and town meeting.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you did. Anything that's going to be done there is going to be a great improvement to the site as you've outlined, and I appreciate the work that you put in and the other town departments. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you.
Mr. Simonian?
Through the chair to the town manager, I'm just wondering, because we've had conversations in the past, I've also had the conversation with the town assessor on the difference between what we collect tax rate, vacant lot, building on the lot, but it's not occupied, et cetera. Do we have an idea, like, how much, what the benefit to the town is of this becoming occupied and what the change will be?
Certainly, no, that's a good question. Right now, it produces zero taxes, and we do have to say there were taxes that were owed on the property, so that the town does have to, from an accounting perspective, put that down as a loss. But clearly, it's been well over 10 years, it's been 13 years since the town has had it, so it's lost all those years of property taxes anyway.
Right.
Based on an assessed value of, let's say it comes out around $300,000, as Mr. Burney came up, maybe $7,000 a year in taxes.
Yeah, I think
depending on what they do.
Current tax card has it at $348,000 or $360,000 of value, and essentially that's the value of the land, because the buildings really aren't habitable in the condition that they're in.
So approximately $7,500.
Yeah.
At $300,000, it would be about $7,200. So, again, it depends on what the future owner does with the property, but that gives us a pretty good idea. And if you think of it, just in the next couple of years, just recouping, getting it back on the tax rolls. Our concern, as Adam has said, has been safety as well. It's been a public safety problem. We've occasionally had to do some police surveillance there for vandalism. The building was stripped of copper. It's, the fact that someone wants to come in and invest in it, it's a great thing for the town. They'll be bringing new jobs to the town, new taxes, and just cleaning up an eyesore and taking the liability and responsibility away from the town and putting it back into the private sector.
Thanks.
And I just want to say, I think that what I was trying to get at with some of the comparable properties is the value of this can only go up. So while we're estimating it at $350,000 now, investment only creates greater value, so it only increases that potential tax benefit.
Is there anything else?
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we vote, excuse me, transfer the deed to Christopher Mazuski for the Borma Scavone property on 121 Southbridge Street.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Thank you, Mr. Burney.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next item we have is the Emergency Management Performance Grant, fiscal year 2013-14.
Yes, through the chair, I'm here tonight, and the actual grant application is in your packet tonight. This was just an oversight. This grant was due on May 31st, and just through an oversight, we had not come to the board for the vote to apply, accept and expend the funds, and we took the chance that you would want us to apply for the funds. It's a formula grant, so we put the application in for the 31st, and now we're here tonight for a vote to accept and expend. For this particular grant, a board vote isn't required anyway for the application process. Some grants do require that. This one did not. Just as a matter of course and practice, we always come to the board because we want you to know what we're applying for. But this one was just an oversight. It was due on May 31st. It's a formula grant, it's based on population, and Auburn is, this is a two-part grant. This year, they merged the EMPG funds. Mr. Holstrom may remember that the first time we applied for the EMPG funds, we received funding for Code Red. And then every year, we've been using our EMPG funds to fund Code Red with a match from the local cable funds because it is linked with the television and other communications. So there are two parts to this one grant this time. They've merged the two because they never got the I believe, they didn't get the FY13 out there in time. So for FY13, the formula for Auburn is $3,975. And we have proposed to use this to fit out the EOC and relocate the EOC from Town Hall down to the police station. We have been to a number of conferences and have meetings with MEMA and FEMA, and they are recommending that any community's EOC be located as close as possible to where your dispatch operations, so you can have a better flow of information between your EOC and your dispatch in the case of an emergency. The town hall here has been a great temporary site for an EOC, but when you think of it, it is rather secluded from the police department, from the fire department. Being on the second floor of an older building, it's also not necessarily the best place to house something like that. We do have backup generators, but if even the backup generator goes down, we could potentially be out of communications, and you can't have that for the EOC. So the Local Emergency Planning Committee, LAMPC, has recommended that we move the EOC down to the police station. So we would be looking to fund that move. It's not very expensive. The $3,975 that we're putting in for in the grant, that is the formula amount they're giving us. We could use that on phones, wiring, computers, technology, supplies, anything we need to enhance the ability to have the EOC there, which generally, as Mr. Holstrom will remember, one of the concerns we always had is how many plugs do we have for computers? How many phone jacks do we have? Because if you were to have a true EOC operation and you could have 20 people in that room,
Sure.
that planning board room doesn't really hold 20 people and all the support equipment that they need. So that's what the first half is for. And the second half is the FY14 funds, which become available around October versus July for the 13 funds. And that is in the amount of $4,460. And again, we'd like to fund year 4 of Code Red. And I say year 4, we have, our contract was a 3-year contract. It expires this December, so we will be renegotiating a cost with them. We're assuming that we're going to keep within a similar amount of money to go forward with Code Red. So we are asking for your approval tonight, should we get the grant award, which we anticipate we will because it is formula-based, for the ability to accept the funds and expend them, which is required by DOI regulations.
Questions, Mr. Carpenter?
Where the room is being, in that we have heard about the police station having water issues and HVAC issues, boiler issues ongoing. Where we're using the community room, is there any issue with potential flooding, anything of that nature? And second, so we're moving the monitors from here to the police station?
Through the chair, actually, the monitors that are in there now are primarily in there so we can televise and handle all of the board and commission meetings that take place there. So it's my understanding that those would remain there. There are monitors at the police station. This would fund if we needed to have additional monitors. But any equipment that was purchased by the local cable committee for that room, for purposes of televising, would remain in that room. Some of the equipment at the police station is very similar type equipment, not as many screens, but this could go toward that cost. And we're also looking for additional grants, as we always do, under Homeland Security. Second part of your question, or the first part of your question, related to the physical concerns with the building. The frozen pipes were, nobody could predict that was going to happen. It was extremely cold winter. It was tough to get into them. The damage has been repaired. The room is up and running once again. We can't say it would never happen, but I think the chances of it happening here in an older building are probably equally as much of a concern. There's always going to be a problem with an older building. The police department is not an older building, but it does have some HVAC issues. But as far as maintaining the ability to operate there, the police department has never gone down, and also has the opportunity to bring in emergency systems, which we had to do at that time, so they could always continue to run dispatch and always continue to run EOC. So the redundancy is better at the police station than it is here. The last piece of this was for radio communications and transmissions. That community room at the police department is better equipped than the town hall is.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we authorize to accept and expend the funds on the Emergency Management Performance Grant.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. And the last item?
Last item, I just wanted to remind the board, next week, hard to believe it's here already, is the...
Next week?
Next week.
Wow.
A week from Thursday evening is the Independence Day celebration. And again, it's Thursday, July 3rd, with a rain date, which we don't even want to say that word, but with a rain date, given that Thursdays have traditionally been raining here for about a year on our summer concerts. So rain date would be Sunday, July 6th. The events primarily start at 6 p.m., and that would be the food, the vendors. We've probably got about 25 vendors, lots of different food opportunities this year. We've added some new kids' games. We've added a rock climbing wall, which should be pretty interesting. We've added a stationary racetrack that has small cars that go around on the racetrack. We do have the train that goes around, and there was a petting zoo, and the Decorate Your Bike contest. So all of that starts at 6 and goes through 9:30. This year, and you've been contacted, but just to remind everybody, at 6:15, we have a grand entrance just from the start of where the Pepper's sign is at the beginning of the facility into the Performance Pavilion with opening remarks at 6:30. And then from all the elected officials, local, state, federal, and we have the Chester P. Tuttle Post as well as the Vietnam Veterans Color Guards appearing. And we have invited, and he has accepted, Congressman McGovern, I believe Representative Frost, and Senator Moore may be in session, waiting to find out on that. The fireworks start at 9:30. So I wanted to just make a note that the concert this year starts at 7 p.m., and they are staying until 9:30 when the fireworks start. It is the Outriggers, and they were there last week at the concert. They're a great band. They have a good following. This concert is fully sponsored by Hometown Bank. If you recall, this board accepted a donation from Hometown Bank. Another part, what we're doing this year, brand new, is we are going to be having a town/group photo to celebrate Auburn's history as Flagtown. And we have purchased 1,000 small flags to hand out to attendees who are there. And at 8 o'clock, so the Outriggers will take a break, and they'll announce it, and at 8 o'clock, we'll have flags handed out to everybody, and there's going to be a group photo taken from aerial of who's ever there, waving their flags, just a commemoration of Auburn's Flagtown. We thought it would just be a nice community event to have.
Nice.
And I think that's it. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. We do have shuttles. We have 2 large WRTA buses, plus our 2 senior center van shuttles. We have the route that is being tweaked a little bit from last year, because we do have follow-up meetings to all of our events and determined, where some of the kinks might have been with the transportation. So we've changed the route a little bit. Those maps should be going up probably this week, if not in the next day or two. It should be going online as well as on social media, so you can see where to park. You can see the shuttle, and the shuttles are going to be continuous. There'll be handicap parking designated at the site. There'll be handicap parking designated at the senior center, and then there are 6 or 7 other places for parking throughout town. Once again, Auburn Mall has generously allowed us to have parking and shuttle launches from there. Last year, we had over 600 cars that were parked there just to use the shuttle. And if you recall, everyone was out of there last year. The police and WRTA did a great job. The entire crowd, 5,000 people, were cleared out in 20 minutes. So all of that should be available online if anyone is looking for it. And I also brought these just so you could have them tonight, just in hard copy.
And I have actually a quick question. Just you reminded me about the parking. I would assume the same precautions will be taken to ensure that those streets that we have no parking on those residential streets will be enforced?
It will be
We'll have-
posted, yes. The
posted and
DPW
it'll
will
be-
be going out early that afternoon and putting cones on those streets and signs. I believe we made up 250 signs on Friday, no parking. And those signs will be posted as well as the cones. Some streets are parking one side only, some streets are no parking at all.
Yeah.
And that map will also be posted at the same time we post the parking map. It's just being tweaked by DPW. It's just about there. They have one more meeting, I believe, tomorrow with the WRTA, just to make sure the drivers know the route, have seen the route, and hopefully we avoid any issues.
I asked, through the approval process, and I know you're aware that, there was some assurances made to those residents up there that during an event like this.
Correct.
There wouldn't be parking.
There is no
so-
parking on Curtis Street, and that is
Okay.
one of the ones that was in the
Yep.
planning board. It was in the site plan approval as a
Right.
condition, and it was a condition not to use that access out onto Curtis Street, and it's only for an emergency if we need to. It
Right.
will be open. That gate will be monitored by police and/or fire.
Good.
So nobody will be allowed out onto that, and there's no parking at all in Curtis.
Great, thanks.
Question.
Mr. Carpenter?
Interface with the residents who live up there?
Through the chair, last year, we went door to door to each house that was affected. DPW knocked on every single door that was there and explained what the parking situation would be, and it will be the exact same thing again this year. So this year, we are posting it. I can check with Bill Coyle and see if he's planning to go door to door again, but last year, they spent several hours going through every single neighborhood and letting them know what we were doing.
You mentioned they have a post meeting. Can residents attend? Is that publicly posted during the evening hours, so residents who might have had issues? People trespassing, trashing their lawn. I mean, when they were building it, we certainly had a huge number of issues with people trespassing on residents' lawns and utilizing their lawn furniture and the like, and I certainly don't want to see a repeat of that situation, so.
Through the chair, the post-event meeting has been an internal meeting. It's police, fire, DPW, engineering, Board of Health, because it involves all the permits, it's been the WRTA, and each of us comes to that meeting with a list of any complaints that their particular office received. So if the police received complaints, they bring them, the fire received them. So at that meeting, any complaint is vetted. I have to say, last year, we did not get one complaint. We had a couple of calls to ask prior to the event what the trash pickup schedule was going to be, but post-event, we did not get any complaints about the event. So if we did, those complaints would be vetted in that meeting. And then we actually have a written report that Jeff Mitchell prepared for us, pretty extensive on what some of the issues were, how we can fix it, what we should do next year. And again, it's based on just input from all of the employees who we probably have, and we have scores of employees who are at that event all night, as well as any calls or concerns that came in from residents.
Thank
And residents, just for to your point, and it's a very good point, residents are most welcome to call town manager's office, or obviously, I don't want to speak for you, the Board of Selectmen's office, the day after, and any of the days after the event, to report any problems. Generally, the residents have, in the past, called the police department, and the police have a log of those calls that come in.
Anything else on that? Do you have anything else? Okay. Moving on, we have no tabled items, Board of Selectmen member items. The first is by Mr. Holstrom.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to raise a point of order on the member items before we proceed.
Okay.
Member item A and member item D, this is a policy issue. Those two items do not meet the approved Board of Selectmen policy for member items. Neither one is accompanied by the summary for the item. We've been over this a few times. We were just given our updated policies about a week ago or so, and I was reading through, and I noticed that we specifically spelled out that every agenda item must be accompanied by a summary.
Well, I'm going to allow, because I allowed you to make your comments regarding statements at the last meeting.
I
without
realize
any
that, but
summary.
it was on the agenda properly, and in the past, we've excluded member items from the agenda for this very reason. So I'm raising the point of order because we're not following policy again.
Mr. Holstrom, did you have a
Madam
comment
Chair,
on that?
if I may address Mr. Simonian's comment, basically what I want to do is address his comments on working together as a board, and that basically summarizes, I'm not going to summarize in the agenda of what I want to say. I am just summarizing, I am going to address your comments on working together as a board. Summary, that's all there is, and I would like to proceed with what I have because I feel that this is summary enough because of the comments you made on working together as a board.
Through the chair, I'm going to restate my position. A point of order is a point of order, policy is policy. We've talked about this, and as I said, there have been agenda items, and I acknowledged, because I didn't provide a summary, they were excluded from the agenda. So I'm asking that we continue to follow the policy that we voted and we set, and it was argued for adamantly. I just don't think we should present to the public that, again, we're passing policies and not following them.
If I can speak on the point of order, Steve, to your point. I did meet with the chair and the manager about my issues, and I was told that this was the proper format to put it in. So as far as I know, I am following the policy. I did ask the question. I followed through. I made myself available during the workday to meet with the manager and the chair. So I understand your point, but if a member is doing everything they can to, or is getting guidance, I think we need to let the member speak.
And I'll just address the agenda item A. I felt that there was enough information there without violating open meeting law, where, from what Mr. Holstrom indicated to me, he had a conversation with you, and if he shared that information with me for the posting, then it would be in a violation of open meeting law. And so I accepted that.
I mean, Mr. Holstrom was one of the people who adamantly argued for the policy, stating several times that the reason for a summary was so that other members would know what was going to be discussed. Now, item B and C, I have no problem with. They have a title, they have a one-line summary, and I'm perfectly happy to discuss that. But if we're going to discuss A and D, I feel that we're in violation, once again, of our own policy. We're voting in these policies, we're arguing for them, and then we're saying, well, we're going to make an exception. Well, it doesn't apply. I mean, either we follow our policies to the letter of the policy or we don't. I don't know how much more clearly you can state that.
And we're in the point of order, Mr. Holstrom.
Madam Chair, I think from what I'm hearing now, it was very convenient for Mr. Simonian to make comments and how we to work together as a board at the last meeting under comments. But because I want to bring that under Selectmen member items and address his comments directly, as I didn't want to do last week or our last meeting because of him not being here, I want to address his comments on working together as a board. And it's not coming under comments, it's coming under Selectmen member items because I have not discussed it with any other member of the board. And now, because you've been able to get up in your soapbox and tell us what you think and what you thought about working together as a board, and now I am not able to address that because that comes under comments, under Selectmen member items, I don't agree. And I think I should be able to address any of the comments that you had made at our last meeting when you had made those comments. Again, I tabled this because you were not here at our last meeting, and now I want to speak tonight, and I believe that the summary is address your comments on working together as a board, summarizes what it is and meets the requirements of the policy.
Policy is the policy. I'm not going to argue. I stated clearly, I'm not going to get bogged down. I don't understand where the animosities come from, but I'm just going to state it this way. If we're going to violate policy, I'm not going to participate. So I've made my case. These policies were argued for adamantly. We said we put these policies in place and we follow them. It's similar to some of the other things we've done. No electronic devices, and then there's an exception. Well, for this one time, we're going to let someone, I mean, it's ridiculous. So I'm trying to work with everybody, stick to the policies that we all voted for as a board. It was clear. There will be a title and there will be a summary. And as I said, if we're gonna violate our policy, again, I'm not going to participate in the discussion of those two member items. I'll be happy to come back when you discuss B and C, but I am not gonna be part of violating our own policy that we voted for, that was argued for adamantly.
Again, through the chair, the comments were made, and you made comments under public comments because you did not want to come under a member item. You didn't give us a summary, so you made your comments under public comment. Now, I am going to address your comments on working together as a board to put some comments at rest and let people know exactly what you had told me in an email, except not on a telephone.
Mr.
And I
Holstrom.
wish you will go forward and with that summary, and that's meeting the requirements of the policy.
Mr. Holstrom, to ensure that, because you held it until Mr. Simonian was here, he's already stated twice, he won't stay if we allow it. Mr. Simonian spoke under public comment. I'm going to hold that item until public comment and then allow you
Thank
to
you.
proceed. So regarding the point of order on item D, request to address how the board handles posting and discussion of Board of Selectmen agenda items. Mr. Carpenter had a question regarding what's the difference between a Board of Selectmen item and a member item? And I felt that that was an adequate explanation.
So I'm not going to be able to talk about B and C.
Well, I'm going to, no, you are, B and C, I mean, we've moved that forward, but
I'm concerned as a new member, and I suppose it isn't fair to raise the issue, but as a new member, many of you are perhaps content with how the agenda goes. Me, personally, 90% of the questions that I direct probably at Sharon and the manager, or the chair, or another member, could probably be answered if there was proper description in a warrant, in this item. So I would like a brief summary. If, in the instance I did use the directing board comment, that I was told was at the behest of Labor Council. So I think that solves a lot of problems, ends a lot of questions. If we are getting direction from staff or consultants,
I just have a question. Are you on agenda item D?
You said D.
Okay, so I said we're going to discuss agenda item D to see if we were going to, I feel that it meets the summary. Mr. Carpenter, as a new member, had a question on the posting agenda items, which we're going to have in public.
B, C, or D, as I said.
Well, I'm going to let you start with agenda item B.
Okay. As I said, and I understand Steve's point, and I am a rule follower, so I understand your point. In this case, I did seek advice, and I was given this guidance. So to me, personally, if you put something on and this was what it was, or in Mr. Holstrom's case where he is specifically calling out what the topic, he's not going to give us whatever the flux of it is. But anywho, on the town meeting reporting procedures. Currently, we, as a board, have been getting to town meeting and reporting to town meeting the vote count. This goes back to 2009, when a totally different board set this policy. And personally, for me, once a majority of the board has taken a position, that is the position of the board. If a member has a strong objection, that's between that member and the moderator, recognizing them and giving what George Jewell used to call the minority report, which anybody who's a town meeting member during that time, George was famous for his minority report, so he would get up and he would explain his rationale, why he voted the way he voted, and he felt strongly enough about those issues that he wanted to get up and do that. To me personally, the board has acted. We as a board, government is a team exercise. Individually, we have our own interests, obviously, and we can talk to other members and try and get support for those as they may. But when the board speaks and votes, that's all town meeting needs to know. It doesn't need to know that I voted against it because I am a member. Unless I'm willing to get up at town meeting and follow George's example and give a minority report, the board has taken its position quite rightly. We do not need to create artificial divisions, artificial points where one person voted against it, two people voted against it. To me, speaking both as a former town meeting member, the board's recommendation is the board's recommendation. The majority rules, for better or worse. That's how democracy works. I would ask the board to discontinue that process. Let us support each other as board members. We may not always win the votes, and, you know, I think I spent 8 of 14 years on the planning board being 4-1, so I know what it's like to be in the minority. But there's a time for discussion, there's a time for decision-making, and there's a time to close ranks and go to town meeting and say, this is what the Board of Selectmen, in their wisdom, is recommending. So that is my concern, and that is my request, that the board discontinue that policy. I don't think that it is helpful. I don't think that it gives any information to town meeting members that is of value. And, you know, if town meeting members are that interested in how the votes go, I'm sure they would come up and, as I have done many times, look through the minutes and watch the meetings and the like. So that would be the nature of my request, that, and I would make a motion to that effect prior to, unless people would like to discuss it.
Well, I appreciate the motion and the second that we'll discuss.
Second.
Okay. So I'll just point out under discussion that you're absolutely right. It was a motion made before any one of us were on this board, so it was a completely different board. And I would point out that the Finance Committee, who also makes recommendations, takes a position of either, you know, approval, recommend, not recommend, defer, or no position. They don't list how the members voted. So I would support Mr. Carpenter's request, and again, if a town meeting member, if it's a contentious issue and they wish to know how the board voted, certainly they are, through the moderator, you know, can ask that those positions are available, or at least members know how they voted. Is there discussion? Are there other comments? Mr. Simonian?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Carpenter. I don't really think it adds or detracts any value to the town meeting warrant. The decision's been made, so so be it, and it'll save some ink too.
Okay. Is there anything else? So we have a motion to not post the actual vote, but just the position of, the majority position of the board. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Hamel is a town meeting member? Are you?
Joe Hamel, Precinct 5. I would stay with the current system of posting the votes to the Board of Selectmen. I think the town meeting members should know how the Board of Selectmen voted on an issue that comes before us.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
You know how the board has decided. The board has, as a committee, decided that that is their position. Individual members, we act as a committee. We do not act as individual members. When we have our discussion, I know many town meeting members who watch all the meetings. They know what's going on before I do. So I know that they are very committed. If they are interested in the voting habits of the Board of Selectmen, and again, we're not stifling any member. If they feel strongly about an issue, they can get up at town meeting and the moderator's approval. So I think that the town meeting needs to know what this board has done, not what individual members have voted.
Is there anything else on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Next is Mr. Carpenter as well.
Yes, specifically on office hours. I guess I missed it in the rush of the meeting. We set hours 5:30 to 6:30 in Monday and Thursday. I don't know the average commute for the Auburn resident, but I know at 5:30 I'm usually stuck in traffic somewhere in the state. And if I'm going to fulfill my responsibilities under the goal, that is not a time that's going to work for me on either day, because Thursdays is a late day for the agency that I spend a great deal of my time auditing, they don't get out till 6 o'clock. Then I have a 45-minute to an hour commute, if not longer, from that. So I would ask that the board change the time from 5:30, from 5:30 to 6:30 to maybe 6:15 to 7:15, so that other commuters can get here and utilize the service. And I would also think if we're interested in increasing our access, we might consider a Saturday, as opposed to have one weekday and one Saturday. And I know people are busy, they have things to do, but I would happily volunteer to do the Saturdays that we have them, just so that that's not something that, not a burden on the other. I know Steve has a lot of stuff, I know Ken, everybody has a lot of stuff, so.
So it's my recollection that we had, and again, I don't have the specific in front of us. It was my recollection that we had recommended the 5:30 to 6:30 on the Monday meeting, because town hall is open, it's prior to our meeting. I didn't recall setting a 6:30 to 7:30 on the other times. So, I'm sorry, 5:30 to 6:30. Certainly, it's not an issue I wouldn't think to change it from 6:30 to 7:30. I can work on a schedule and have Sharon email it to you and kind of, I forget what you call it, not doodle, what's that? The availability online, like a little,
On the website?
yes, yeah, and we're also doing it rotating. What is that? Online availability. Is it doodle? It is doodle, okay. We'll do a doodle schedule and check people's availability.
If it is Monday and Thursday, I'm just going to tell you, it's going to be difficult for me to do that.
Okay,
That's
so
why
is there
I
any
brought-
objection to adding a Saturday in the rotation?
And obviously, I am available by appointment. If anybody needs to call me, any resident, staff member, anybody needs to call me, my contact information is on. I'm happy to meet with people at their convenience, subject to my schedule. So
Yep,
it's
we are
certainly
as
not
well.
in an effort to avoid it. It's in an effort to try and make it meaningful for the townspeople.
Okay. And the last item by Mr. Carpenter, I know Mr. Simone felt it didn't meet the criteria. It was a question of how we post Board of Selectmen items as opposed to member items. Go ahead.
Well, through the chair to Mr. Carpenter, I just want to express this. I understand the point that you made. During the discussion of this policy, in the first place, I raised that exact point, that, I felt it was sufficient in the title of a member item to encapsulate what we as members intended to discuss. It was argued against vehemently, and it was a 4-to-1 vote that there be a summary for every member item. Now, I understand that you sought guidance and you were given incorrect information. That being the case, I'd be willing to make an exception. If the board votes to do that, you're a new member, you sought guidance and said you got mistaken information, whatever it was. So in that case, that's fine. But I would just, we're a policy-making board. If we can't make policies and follow our own policies, what does that say to the people who elected us?
I don't disagree with you. And if we were asking staff to come in, when we're asking for member items, if I'm asking the planner or the library director to come in and express something, in consideration for the time that they're spending, and it's costing us money to have them here, and it's also time away from their family, to me, if I'm going to ask the library director to come in to talk about something, I want that individual to know what it is that I'm asking about. So I thoroughly agree with, we have to respect each other's times, and I'm fully aware of that. Maybe we need to look at amending the policies because to me, this is what I expect on a policy, unless you're asking a member of the staff to come in on a specific issue or on a variety of issues, because they need to prepare. I would expect more detail for that, but, you know, I understand your point of view, and I respect it, and certainly appreciate you bringing that up.
So I'm going to allow this because I feel, I already determined that this is enough to summarize what you want to discuss. It wasn't, you didn't ask, discuss, you know, Board of Selectmen agenda items. That's not what you put on. You put a request to address how board handles posting and discussion of Board of Selectmen agenda items, which is a summary of what you wish to discuss. So please go on, Mr. Carpenter.
So like I said, for me, it's helpful to have some, and I know it's a lot of work for staff, and I know that in a busy day, you know, the last thing that you need is another task to do for, you know, something. But for me as a member and to prepare, I like to know the history sometimes, as Steve has pointed out tonight, and I know others have in the past, a couple of meetings. It would be helpful to have a brief description. So if it's a grant, you know, when did they come in? What is it that's being asked of us? I'm not asking them to, you know, tell us that there's a $500,000 grant, because of course they're excited, they want to come in, they want to say it here, but at least if there's some detail to the subject item, and if it's being put on at the request of a staff member or a counsel to the board, again, I would just like to know that, because to me, I want to know where these discussion items are emanating from, so that I know what is going on with the board. So that is my request, and again, it's a majority vote of the board. I understand that everybody prepares differently, so I will certainly respect the board's decision one way or the other.
So, you know, and again, according to our policy, the chair sets the agenda. So Board of Selectmen items, general items fall under Board of Selectmen items. Items that individual members wish to bring forward fall under member items, which include this information. If it's a member item, if it's an item that falls under action to be taken or an issue to be addressed by the board as a whole, it falls under Board of Selectmen items. The administrative assistant or the manager don't provide the information in the packet. It's based on a joint meeting and an agenda set by the chair. If I know that Mr. Carpenter has asked for the draft agenda, if members have any issues with the draft agenda, feel free to, you know, email me, as long as it's not discussing or deliberating on the agenda item, if you feel you need more clarification. Is that adequate?
That's fine. It's up to the board, Madam Chair. It's not up to the chair, it's up to the board to vote whether they wish to have further detail or not. So I understand your point, and you were kind enough to explain that to me. I didn't ask for the draft agenda, I asked for the agenda. I don't need a draft agenda, I need the agenda.
The agenda's
Sharon
not-
sends it over to the town clerk, all she needs to do is include the board members, and I'm happy.
Okay, but when I leave that office at, you know, 8:30 in the morning, at that point, it's a draft agenda. Sharon has taken notes, and and I can't guarantee when that agenda, I know it'll be before the posting time, but I don't know what time.
Through the chair, after Mr. Carpenter brought this up last week, we did, he asked if we could send the agenda to all the board members as soon as it's posted to the town clerk. We will do that. The actual agenda packets are not ready till Friday, because sometimes it's right up until the last minute that people are putting items on it, and we're finalizing that agenda. Friday morning is dedicated to getting all the attachments put together in the packet. So we did email the board agenda to everybody as soon as it was posted. This particular agenda on Thursday also had attachments in it because we had them available. Then there was the amended agenda that went out on Friday. So it's not a problem for us to do that, to send the agenda once it's been posted.
And I'm certainly not asking for a packet, and I said that at the last meeting. I'm not asking for the packet to be done. But if the fire chief is coming in on an emergency management performance grant, he knows what he's going to talk about. He can supply a brief little something. If the police chief is coming in, I don't think it's a great deal to ask that they provide us some guidance as to what they're going to discuss. And again, I just want to know how it's getting onto the agenda. I have absolutely no interest in calling anybody out or causing any difficulty, but this is my request. It's up to the board how they want their agenda. Me personally, that's helpful to me. If it's not helpful to others or others don't agree, I am happy to accept the wisdom of the board. I'm not, it is not an issue that's going to linger for 5 years or anything, but
Through the
it's up to
chair,
the board.
through the chair, if I could just ask for clarification. I know the board, I believe the discussion tonight was about posting Board of Selectmen agenda items, not town manager items, but it was brought up, so I just want to ask so we can clarify it. Mr. Carpenter, when you
really
say you
meant
want to know the
to be
source,
agenda items.
Hold on a minute, please.
sorry, you were just looking for the, I want to get right, you want to know who requested the item or the source of the request?
And-
So if
and
it's
what
under
brief-
town manager items, it comes from town administration. I'm not quite sure I'm following. What additional information do you want? We'll provide it, we just want to know what you're looking for.
Okay, so let's look at tonight. Let's go through the exercise. No problem. Now I have something in my pen. If we're getting grants, and again, I'm a new member, I don't know what you voted on, what you didn't vote on. I do watch your meetings, but trust me, this was not on my must-see TV. With all due respect to the board members, it was not something that I set my DVR to. If you're bringing something up, just a brief description of what it is. So if it's Independence Day, update the board on, the activities of Independence Day. If it's a grant that you're announcing, a little history is helpful, especially when you have a new member, and a brief description of what the grant is, what it's about.
Through the chair, absolutely. And as you said, you weren't here the last time we had come forward just to announce to the board that we did get the grants, but when we come in and explain to the board what we're looking for your vote, like tonight, you got the entire application. Usually, the application's not prepared yet because we don't have an authorization to go forward, so we bring in a description of what the grant is, if there's a match, when it's due, and what it would support. Generally, that goes actually on the agenda in the form of the written vote, because that's what we're looking for. So in tonight's case, request authorization to accept and expend funds. That's the legal vote that we need to take. So that's what's on the agenda with the backup information in the packet. So I guess I'm just wondering, do you want the agenda item to also have a summary of the backup information that's in the packet?
Correct. I don't need a motion,
We're
personally.
going to move on this.
Well, we, through the chair, we do need to put that motion on there.
With all due respect, I know how to make a motion. I've done it for many, many years. I don't need it written for me. But I understand this has been the board policy going back time immemorial.
Okay.
If it needs to be there, or if people want it there, that's fine. For me, I'd rather the information meeting, so that when I get this on Thursday, I can look at it and say, oh, I got a question, town hall closes at 1, these are the people that I gotta be talking to. Okay, that's the crux of what I'm doing. And again, it's up to the board what the board wants to do. I'm happy to live with
We're
however
gonna-
the board wishes to take no action. The board is well within its rights to do so.
Okay, we're going to move on. As chair, who sets the agenda, I've taken your comments into consideration, and we'll be sure that you have the information that you've requested. So, moving on, Mr. Simonian.
Yeah, just on that train of thought, and I'll put it on the agenda for next meeting, but the last 2 times we did it, we didn't really require, some consideration to having a quick executive session, as we did when Mrs. Brotherton and Mr. Holstrom came on board, just to brief Mr. Carpenter on any of the legal matters.
We did have that conversation, and there's
Oh, all right, I missed it.
I did with the manager. We expect an update to be coming in, so rather than coming in 2 consecutive weeks, we expect expect an update to be coming in on one of the executive session matters. So it was our hope, the first week.
Labor Council thought it might be around mid-July that he would have
So-
something more substantial on one of the litigation
Oh,
cases.
fair enough.
So he
Yeah.
asked that we hold off until July or August,
That's
when he
fine.
could actually
Yeah.
give the board some final information.
Because we would have needed to take action, and in looking at the outstanding executive session matters, I think it's appropriate to hold them until we have that update. Thank you. Okay. Anything else under member items? Public comment?
Okay.
Mr. Holstrom?
I'd like to address Mr. Simonian. Steve, after our last meeting, I got to thinking, in our last meeting, it will be a month ago because he was not able to attend our last meeting 2 weeks ago. I got to thinking about the statements that you read, and while I don't agree with a lot of what you said, I do agree with the comments you made. That our democracy expects us to be respectful of each other's right to our own opinions, and also, we as a board need to work together. So in that vein, I called you the next night. You were just sitting down at dinner and I asked you to call me back. You agreed, but instead of a call back, I got the following email. Hi, Ken. Regarding your earlier phone call, I hope that you will understand that with all the false allegations being made against me, I do not feel comfortable having a private conversation with any member of the Board of Selectmen other than Mr. Carpenter. Considering recent events, I have to protect myself and my family. I am happy to discuss anything that you would like to discuss via email, and happy to work with any member of the board on behalf of the residents. Just as a reminder of the rules of the quorum, before you reply to my email, if you have previously discussed anything with any other member, you and I cannot discuss it. Respectfully, Steve Simonian, Auburn Board of Selectmen. I did not return an email. So Steve, through the chair, since you didn't give me the courtesy of a return call, you have no idea what I wanted to say. And you have made it abundantly clear with your email that you will not speak to me directly. I am fully aware of the open meeting law, so I will publicly tell you why I called. My call was to reach out to you to attempt to bridge the gap that you have with myself and other members of the board in the best interest of the town and the residents we all serve. I would have said to you that I agree that we are each entitled to our own opinions, and that while we may not have the same philosophy or opinion on what is best for the town, that we should be able to be civil with each other and agree to disagree without being acrimonious. I would have told you that if you would agree to treat me with courtesy and respect, that I would afford you the same. It's a new year, and we have a new board. I would have asked if there was something that maybe we could agree to work on together. I'm at a loss to understand why you feel that a telephone conversation with me in any way could threaten you or your family. I have never threatened you or anyone in your family. And anyone who knows me would tell you it's not my nature to be confrontational and negative. I do have strong opinions on some things related to Auburn, but so do you. I'm happy with the progress that the town has made over the last 3 years. I think that the town manager form of government is serving the town well. On that we may disagree. I don't know. But I do know that the roads are better today than they were in 2010. Our departments are running more efficiently, and we are in better financial condition than we were in 2010. I love this town. It has always been my home. I want to do what is right for it and the people who live here, including me. Bottom line, you and I are both elected members of the Board of Selectmen. Our mutual responsibility is to serve the people who elected us. But to do that, we need to all work together. So, Steve, if you are only willing to communicate by email and with certain members, answer me. How are we supposed to work together as a board?
Mr. Simonian?
Oh, I'll be happy to answer that question. First of all, you're kind of putting words in my mouth there, you're making some assumptions, but I'll say this. I'm a forgiving man, but I'm not a stupid man. And considering the fact that repeatedly for the last 2 years, you've interrupted me not followed Robert's rules as this board voted to do so many years ago, spoken when you didn't have the floor in an attempt to silence me. I've said several times over the 4 years that I've been on the board and several times over the 2 years that you've been here, that I'm here for one reason only, to work for the people who elected me. If you're finally willing to do that, I say welcome to the party, because that's all I've been doing for the last 4 years. I came up here with no personal agenda. I didn't come up here to take care of any of my friends or anything like that. So, regarding my email, considering that members of this board have gone to the press and told lies about me, I don't see how you can think that I would for a second feel comfortable having a conversation privately. I don't see what, in the age of technology, there's nothing we can accomplish. You want to discuss anything publicly, I'm happy to do so. I will not have private conversations where someone can turn around and say, Steve said this. Like I said, I'm a forgiving man. I'm not a stupid man. And I would say, and I would finish with this, if you truly want to work together as a team and extend that olive branch, I'm reminded of a comment, and I'm sure that you'll remember. 4 years ago, I sat with you for 20 minutes or so when I came to your house the first time I ran for this board. And we talked for a while, and one of the comments that you closed that conversation with were, remember, if you get elected, you can do whatever you want for the first 2 years, but if you're thinking about getting reelected, then you kind of have to be a good boy that third year. So I would say this, I'm happy to work with you. Always have been, always been here to the benefit of the residents, but if you truly want to extend that olive branch, I would just ask, there's one thing I've asked since you said it. You called me unfair and unprofessional, and I acted as neither. I would just ask for that apology. And other than that, happy to work with you on anything, but there's no way I'm putting myself in the position, and it's been done several times, where people said, I said something because it was a conversation I had one-on-one. I'm not going to be stupid and put myself in that position. If you feel that's not working with you, I'm sorry you feel that way, but anything can be accomplished. There's always a means to an end. And like I said, for 4 years, I've had no other agenda than to do what's right for the people who elected me.
We good?
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any additional public comment? Wise. We have the minutes of October 28th, 2013, the minutes of November 7th, 2013, November 12th, 2013, and November 25th of 2013. Are there any corrections or omissions?
I did not get those minutes here, so I will abstain. Obviously, I was not on the board, so you are better suited, the four members here are better suited.
They're not in your packet?
No, I printed out my packet because Karen sent the packet and the attachment because she was out. So I did not come up on Friday to see if the packet was prepared because I figured I have the attachments. I don't.
Yeah.
It's a trip I didn't need to make, so I avoided it. But certainly the four members who were here are more than able to.
Are there any?
Just abstain because I have
Are there any corrections or omissions?
Again, comment,
Nice
thank
job,
you
Joe.
very much, Sharon, detailed, comprehensive, and well done. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I'll entertain a motion.
To adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, we are
Aye.
adjourned.
Thank you, good night.